Step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the id wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with a surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High etiquette, held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Burst Podcast TV. See the mirror for what it is. The progression begins now.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming at you today on a Dono and sub drive, trying to get Heckle Bus rides up and going for that StreamYard subscription, as well as things have been kind of tight here lately because of a wrongful eviction. And then just recently, our beloved Eddie passed away. So we had some funerary expenses, and things just aren't really good here. So we're just going to hop on, and we're going to do a Dono Drive, sub drive, bring some more information to you. And one of the foundational principles that brought me to doing this podcast is the Tucker 48. The Tucker 48 is something that most people don't know about. They don't hear about it because it's been hidden and dropped. But it's one of the most eye-opening events in modern history when it comes to this commercial world, the corporatocracy, this capitalism, competition, all this stuff. And it's a revolutionary safety features that were built into this car called the Tucker 48. And it was designed by a guy named Preston Tucker, who was futures decades ahead in the future when it come to his designs and stuff, including a pop-out windshield, a center headlight that would turn with the steering wheel when you turn, so you could actually see and light as you're going around corners and stuff. A lot of the stuff that he was implementing was resistant by the industry, because that meant they had to up their game, as well as it made it sound like they were not interested in the safety by designing their vehicles the way they were. And we have to remember, this came upon a time where back when cars were first designed, the safety wasn't quite so much as a matter of collisions and stuff like that, but more of a matter of nature and, the buggy style, keeping you protected from nature, not each other. But by 1948, we had evolved in the mechanization and technology of engines, that now we had much more powerful engines. Now it was a concern. So GM, Ford, Chrysler, all of it, they didn't want to move forward. But because Tucker and his revolutionary ideas of bringing that safety was a striking pose, he garnered 183,000 investors. Ended up with the largest factory in history at the time, far above any Ford factory, and started producing these cars. That's when the corporate political sabotage came in. And if you understand what we mean by corporatocracy, that's a political party that's married to the corporate oligarchy. Okay. We no longer really have that republic form of government that we were promised because we didn't keep it. And there's a very famous quote: you have a republic if you can keep it. We failed to keep it because that oversight is on the people, not the government. So when the government screamed out in favor of Ford, GM, and Chrysler under the Securities Exchange Commission, claiming fraud, and the details of that are things like cornering markets and stuff because he was implementing safety features that the other companies didn't have, and that would corner a market, things like that. And that's merely what competition is all about when you have innovative ideas that create better products. So it was hidden from the people. Why 183,000 investors didn't start screaming out and been heard, I don't know. Maybe it was the news media and fake news. Maybe the news media was already in their pocket back then, right? See, this isn't something that just happened overnight, folks. This has been going on a long time, and people are failing to observe it. But what happened is they took him to court and everything, ended up losing everything on the investment side because of the court actions and the effective estoppel of the production and everything until the case was over. Well, by the time the case was over, that consumed all the funding he had and all the investments, and nobody could move forward with it anymore. Guess what? Guess what? Hold on. I got somebody at the door. I'll be right back, folks. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, folks. But we just got his remains back. So that's that. But back to the Tucker 48. When they were acquitted, when Tucker and his investors were acquitted, you would think that things would go back on track. But again, like I said, what happened was instead of being able to move forward with the production, it took everything they had. And so that ended that. Consequently, legislation started being passed around to implement every last one of the safety features that he was wanting to provide to the people. Today, every last one of those safety features has been legislated as a requirement. This is why it's important that the people be educated. The people be aware. The people use the word of the people from mouth to mouth and not some fake news media sources. in bed in a menage a trois with a corporatocratic government. You know, this capitalist world is so driven by commerce and everybody's greed and gluttony. I'll be right back, folks. One more brief intercession.
Step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the it wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with a surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High etiquette, held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Burst Podcast TV. See the mirror for what it is. The progression begins now.
Man up, slaves, and hit those buttons, or I'll send ice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, back to Tucker. So we see the importance of the need for people to be educated, particularly in modern times, particularly in a society where off-grid living is getting its momentum. You're going to live off-grid and still keep going to the news media for your information and education? When are you going to start listening to people like myself who have been telling you this stuff for a very, very long time? See, I had somebody query me on my Facebook page today. Not so much query me, but question me in regards to what I've done in my life. And I had to explain to him that I'm one of those guys, kind of like George Washington. I cannot tell a lie. And it's the scriptures I was raised on. It says, I cannot bear false witness. That's a sin. And it took me a few years of contemplating that in my adult life, reflecting back on all the people that lied to me in my life, as well as the lies I fomented. I got caught up in it just like everybody else. But there came a time where I realized, and I convicted myself to truth. Once you convict yourself to truth, how do they convict you of their presumptions and lies that they lay? It's kind of hard. So let's get into a video here. As it goes back to living off the land, let me see here. Oh, come on. Okay, my apologies, folks. Like I said, I am not a production manager. And this one here, this is Yanasa TV. Go to Yanasa TV and sub up. Great information. Another wonderful set of people that are doing this. They're actually doing this is their lifestyle. So pay attention to this video because this is what we're facing in this modern era of moving off grid. There is a resistance. The government does not want you to do that in a certain sense. But this is why I said, if you work with the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Interior under the status of stewardship, you're going to have a much better path. Working in cooperation by holding them to what they're bound to and convicting yourself to the intense labor and mental attitude that you have to have in order to progress in this. So pay attention, because it is a spiritual warfare.
Do you think that there is a deliberate attempt to take farmers and ranchers off of their land in those areas?
I do. I absolutely do. I mean, being a Christian, believing the Bible, I think, humanity is part of God's creation, not a scourge on it. And we're put here to work and steward it. So I think of earth as abundant because it was made by God as our home. I don't think of it as limited. You can harvest abundance from the earth, and it's ever renewable. So of course that means caring for it responsibly, like as if you planned on leaving that land to your children, not exploiting it for your own wealth and just leaving it like a husk behind. But that's all wrapped up in the worldview that a lot of farmers and ranchers share. I think that's how they approach their land. So I don't know that it's this giant connected scheme, in the sense that I don't think that every one of these disparate cases is being pushed by the same individual or individuals, but I think it's part of a broader worldview, in the sense that the world doesn't believe in God, in the sense that these attacks on our rural way of life, this generationally minded way of life, they are connected because they originate from the same false ideas about how earth is designed and for what purpose.
And for what purpose? Absolutely, for what purpose? And that's why I say stewardship. That comes directly from those scriptures. And they use it in their Department of Agricultural conservation, protections, enforcements. Dean Phillips says news doesn't necessarily apply to those off-grid. Absolutely. When we think about news, let me put this out there. When we think about news, think about the word news. It starts with new. So the true news is something that's new to you, and it actually has some kind of validity, some kind of purpose where you can use it in your life. That's new to you. That's what news literally is. Look it up.
There does seem to be this mass attack on all of these individual producers that comes from this same worldview that wants to get them off. And in some cases, it's individuals and NGOs that have a financial incentive. These NGOs kind of exist to sue and settle and to make life hell for working people.
It's a corporate competition, and the bigger you are, the better, the more you're apt to win. This is why it's important for people to understand. See, people, the power is in you. You're the one that's making these choices to purchase these commercial items instead of going through that intense manual labor and providing for yourself. And it's not always intense manual labor, but if you think about it and you start taking back all these responsibilities, you're going to find yourself working all day long and not even having a job and still being able to live. Imagine that. Imagine being able to live without being dependent upon that corporate charter system. Do you want your children to become dependent upon that? Or are you going to help show them the way out? How are you going to do that if you keep sitting on your ass on the couch, watching the boob tube, somebody else's dramatic, mysterious, obsessive, murderous, corrupted lives, because yours is so relevant? You think your vote counts in all this? No, your voice does, but only if you act upon it. Actions speak louder than words.
That's kind of their business model. So you mentioned kind of some of the things USDA is doing or DOI is doing, and I think that's exciting, and that's absolutely the right direction. I agree with you that Brooke Rollins has been a phenomenal agriculture secretary, but I think Congress has to act as well, because the next administration could just revert back to.
And that's why I talk about the Tucker situation there. It's so imperative that the people take back their voice by taking back their actions and responsibilities. Because if they don't, it will bypass Congress. Things like this will continue to happen. They will bring you the new technologies, but only if it's commercially good for them. If it's only allowing them in the commercial aspect to maintain that control of your lives, the comfort and convenience. See, that's how we got into this, comforts and conveniences. That's shirking our duties according to the Christian scriptures. In my opinion only, of course. And remember, I'm not a Christian.
Status quo if they want to. So some of these things, like the abuses of the EPA or the Endangered Species Act, ESA, they need to be changed at the legislative level, in my opinion, because it's becoming a massive problem. It has been for decades. A lot of the cases that I cover here in California, they all start with Endangered Species Act lawsuits. These NGOs that sue because of the protections of the Endangered Species Act, and they can just drag these lawsuits out. They have lawyers on retainer. They have lawyers that work for them. That's all they do is sue. And farmers and ranchers have to get up every.
So instead of getting up there and voicing your opinion when these people come out, you take action upon it. And you are the stewards, showing them that you're doing exactly what the law is telling you to do. And that they have no rights. Exactly. Many don't want to put in the efforts as modern conveniences are, well, convenient. And that's, again, in the Christian society that talks about greed and gluttony. It's not just bearing false witness, it's the greed and gluttony of sitting on the couch, like I said, watching the boob tube, somebody else's dramatic or mysterious or obscene life, because yours is so relevant. All of a sudden you hear the lights or hear the sirens and see the lights, and you peek your head out to see them arresting somebody a couple blocks down the street. What do? You go back to your comfort and convenience because you don't want to deal with it. You don't have a care and that's what their job is, to have care and concern for the community, and they're doing their job, right? That's what they're doing. Go watch my last video. That's not what they're doing. They're trying to push their authority. And like I said, they don't get their authority by anybody but us. When are you going to stand up and show them?
Every morning and feed cows, or they have to go to work, so they don't have the resources or the time to put up with these endless lawsuits, and it's driving them out of business. It's systematically driving them out of business. So that has to be dealt with. It's not sustainable, in my opinion. It's not livable.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's why it's imperative to understand what's happening here, because there are many other things that you need to be aware of. And I want to remind folks, the link is down there if anybody wants to join the panel. Feel free to hit that link, come join and discuss these things. I'm going to be going all day, so there's plenty of room and time for everybody. And if nobody wants to join, I'm just going to keep running my mouth. It would be nice to have some interrogatories here. Hit that link, come join us, and be part of the show. Because now we're going to talk about tap water, something you people have been drinking all your life. I read about this in school. Again, in reference to Hitler's willing executioners and their fluoride experiments. And I learned that America was putting it in their drinking water. Why the fuck would they do that? Why the fuck would Americans put fluoride in their drinking water? Greetings, Dino. How you doing today, brother? You're muted.
Doing well. Thanks for having me up.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming around. I'll do my best to make sure I notice everybody of the videos, the live streams, and posting panel links so you can join. Thanks for the reminder, brother.
Oh yeah, no worries. I was trying when I first started getting onto some of these channels. I get like 3 different notifications, and some of the channels didn't have chats available, so I was really confused by that.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I get them in mine, so.
Right. Well, they were yours. I was at yours trying to get into. Anyway, it was just it's a YouTube weird thing they're doing with your stuff. Just letting you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I
But
know.
no, so just telling you, we're doing that off grid thing, and I hurt my knee a couple days ago, and I've been kind of hobbled. But it's one of those things where it really comes to mind. Is that in this lifestyle we're living, I can't afford to be hobbled. You know what I mean? I need to be able to move around. So
Right.
I've been working it to be able to move around and stuff. But it's one aspect of it that you might not think about. You can't be down for too long with sick if you got to haul your water, for example. You know what I mean? This is
Absolutely.
some of the hard parts of this life. You've got to do these things. And,
Yeah, and when it comes to those medical conditions, sometimes they're kind of severe, and you got to be able to take care of them yourself. I know when I break my hand, I don't go to the doctor. I go to the local parts store and get a fiberglass kit and make my own cast. Set my own bones, make my own cast. I mean, sure, it's going to hurt like hell, but it's going to hurt like the hell with the doctor doing it too.
right. Well, and I still live on insulin, so I still got to maintain that. Figure out that nonsense.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully one of these days there will be solutions for that too. I've been doing some research on that, and I'll show you some of the information. But because it's medical concerns and stuff, we'll do that privately, brother.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of some of it, but yeah, I keep in touch of these things.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Yes,
get back
folks.
to your show.
Yes, folks. Dino is another one of those guys that I remind people vehemently sometimes. Do not believe me. Do not believe the neighbor. Do not believe the government. For crying out loud, do not believe your mother. Do your research so you know. Dino is one of the ones that I know. He does his research. He's right in there with us in study groups and stuff. He's showing his knowledge. He's doing what it takes. He's had his home taken from him. That's why he's off grid. They're trying to move to that lifestyle anyway. So yeah, he recognizes that abuse of authority and everything, and he's partaking in the resolution of that. Luke Roxlock says fluoride-free toothpaste and reverse osmosis. In regards to this one here, which is the tap water one, absolutely. I've discussed charcoal, baking soda, and a little bit of water, and you got yourself one of the best toothpastes there is. The charcoal is going to help with the bacterial gingivitis and things like that. Your cavities and stuff are going to be taken care of with the baking soda. It's going to scrub all that shit off so it can't attach like barnacles and end up with cavities. Natural stuff. And it's cheap as fuck. Excuse the language. So let's get into this one. This is electrifying water. And she's going to show you distilled water versus your tap water. And it's disgusting. I haven't drank tap water since I was 10 years old.
My water electrolyzer, and what I'm going to do is fill up one of the glasses with tap water and one with my distilled water that I have, and electrolyze them both and see what happens. Okay. So this one is tap water.
Right from the tap. This is Thames water, people.
Yeah.
This is coming in all your homes. What you wash with, what you bath with, what you cook with.
Okay. And this, I'm going to put my distilled water.
So this is the water purifier.
A distiller.
A distiller, okay. Okay, she's filling that one up. Okay.
I'm going to just pour some away. Right. So I'll turn this on.
So you think, look, they look the same.
The last bean.
Look clear, look nice.
Beautiful. Got you. Okay. So I'll put one in there, one in here.
Yeah.
Like that. And I just turn it on and let it electrolyze.
Yeah.
Right.
Anytime you drop off or anything, just feel free to hit that link. Come right back up, folks.
So that's already started bubbling, that one.
This one's like, yeah, that's the tap water.
That's your tap, people.
Yeah.
But what does an electrolyzer do?
It separates all of the metals and anything's in it.
Now, I don't know if you guys can see this real well because of the vertical stream here, but I'm going to grab the link to this. I'm going to drop it in the chat for everybody so you can go watch this real quick. But it's already gathering up stuff at the top on the tap water side.
That it will, with an electric current, separate all anything impure in it.
Impure. So this is all the matter that you don't
Then
want.
here it says the colours. So
On this side as well.
Welcome back,
on
Dean.
this side, what colours?
So it says yellow acids, fluoride and other organic matter. Green, what does it say? Arsenic. Blue, bacteria. Look, you can see the blue forming, people. So just bearing in mind that's next to the purified water. There's nothing happening, no reaction. And it's the same, it's all doing the same thing. But on the tap, there's a lot of strange things going on.
Does it say black as well? What black is?
Bubbling on top.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's got black on top, and that's all the metals. And then you got minerals and then bacteria. And your mineral elements would be like your fluorides and arsenic and things like that.
the metal.
Red, iron and rust and bacteria. It's just
Go on the top. Go over so you can see what's happening at the top. Go over the clear one.
yeah.
Disgusting.
Okay, let me turn it off and give it a stir.
Okay.
It's getting hot, this one.
Oh my god. Now I would presume it's getting hot because of the metals.
Yeah, heating up with the electric current.
Guys, those are like literal chunks.
Okay, this is my water.
So you see, folks, not too healthy. Not too healthy. And they say it's clean drinking water. Is it really clean? Doesn't look like it to me. So the next one I got is something interesting for those on the off-grid power setups. This one here is from the national desk, and it says U.S. military airlifts a nuclear reactor. National desk, U.S. military airlifts a mini nuclear reactor. Check this out.
I'm Morgan Stevens in Washington. The U.S. Departments of Defense and Energy have transported a small nuclear reactor by cargo plane in Utah over the weekend, a move officials say could change how the military and even civilian communities access power. A nuclear reactor was airborne for the first time this weekend in a C-17 aircraft. Energy Secretary Chris Wright and Defense Undersecretary Michael Duffy calling the miniature reactor a breakthrough for both U.S. energy production and national security needs.
And I'll remind everybody, a high school student once made a mini nuclear reactor for the home for a science project. So again, just like the Tucker 48, there's technology out there that we have the availability of use ourselves. And granted, it's nuclear power, so we have to be very cautious with that. And that's why it's important to do your research and have the knowledge. It's important to have that communication amongst ourselves to discuss these things, to find out if it is a relevant power source.
Our military installations are reliant on a fragile civilian grid for the majority of our electricity. In an era where enemy cyber attack and sabotage or extreme weather can take out the grid at any moment, failure to evolve our domestic energy infrastructure will be catastrophic.
For its nearly 700
Failure to evolve our infrastructure, and that's coming from the Department of Defense, the biggest money spender on the planet. It is a military government as well, folks, in case you didn't understand.
mile journey from California's March Air Reserve Base to Utah's Hill Air Force Base on Sunday. The microreactor, the size of a minivan, was transported without nuclear fuel. According to President Trump, the reactor was developed in response to China's rapid advances in AI. It's capable of generating up to 5 megawatts of electricity, enough to power a military base or even a small town.
Energy matters. It matters massively. It matters for our economy, matters for our national security, it matters for our quality of life.
It matters for our quality of life. Again, the quality of life that he's talking about there is the quality of those comforts and conveniences. So what quality of life are you seeking? Are you seeking one of comforts and conveniences where you're willing to live within a nuclear reactor? Or are you going to take upon that manual labor and the mental intellect to do the research and the footwork to do it yourself without the nuclear reactor and by using natural means? When do we stop? When do we stop with technology?
I'm on the technology myself, but I had to put together a system that would work with solar panels and batteries, and inverters and that kind of stuff. And I had to learn all that. But right now, for the most part, we have all the energy we need. And,
and
I'm not paying anybody for it anymore. You know, it's all paid for.
And it's within the safety measures that you need to assure you and your companions, visitors and stuff, that it's well taken care of.
Oh yeah, we've charged other people's e-bikes and their power stations and whatever other people who are living similar lifestyle that need the help.
See how that works, folks? Once it's bought and paid for, it's paying for itself. Now it's paying extra, and guess what it does? That cup wells over. Now we can provide those charging for other people without charging them. Imagine that. Awesome shit, brother. Awesome.
The Trump administration made small nuclear reactors a priority with 4 executive orders last year.
We're going heavy into nuclear. I was not a big fan because I didn't like the risk, the danger, but they have the progress they've made with nuclear is unbelievable, and the safety progress they've made is incredible.
Wright said that the Energy Department plans to have 3 microreactors operating by July 4th. In Washington, I'm Morgan Stevens.
3 microplants operating by July 4th. Imagine. And here's one Dean's going to like. Oops. Hit the wrong one. Let me pull my screen share up again.
I keep saying, if this government were actually doing its job and securing people's rights, they would have these little, local power stations, local power ability all over the place. They'd be providing them for the people so that when the major grid goes down, they have these backups and these, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's who they're actually supposed to be providing this stuff for. See, like I said with the computer technology, when I was a young boy, I remember my mom and dad were both federal agents, both worked for the federal government. So we got the first of the computer stuff as a test for the consumer market. Before that, it was all military stuff. So what we're seeing now here is a phase down of the technology being micro-sized, and eventually one day they might want to have those federal agents testing these home models for consumer marketing. So we have to be very well aware of how that process works, and that's what I'm trying to point out. We're seeing the nuclear reactor that was for energy, for large energy stations, and now they're downsizing them, and it's becoming much more convenient. So beware. This one here is from Eli Yoder. We've done one on him before in regards to diesel, Mr. Diesel. And then he's got a lot of them on the fuel thing. And it says, while you pay $5 for diesel, restaurants throw away millions of gallons of free fuel every day. And I've sped this up.
Pulled into the back of a diner in rural Ohio on a Wednesday morning and watched a man fill a 2,200-gallon tank with something the restaurant was giving away for free. Not selling, giving away. The same oil.
And real quick here, I want to point out there is a PayPal link down there for anybody that wants to share some love. Always appreciated. Just hard times here and trying to get some funds wrapped up for upgrading the StreamYard link and everything we've tried on our end. We're still kind of cutting it short again this month because we lost our Eddie and came up with some extra expenses there. So again, every little bit of love is appreciated. PayPal link is right there. Please feel free.
That 3 days earlier had been frying eggs and hash browns was now a commodity that airlines, trucking companies, and fuel refineries were fighting each other to get their hands on. I asked the driver what it was worth by the time it reached the refinery. He said conservatively around $3 a gallon. I did the math in the parking lot, 2,200 gallons, $3 a gallon, one truck, one morning route. And the restaurants along that route had signed over every drop of it for nothing because nobody told him it had value, or perhaps they did it because of logistics or contracts. And did you know that you could...
And that's what I'm talking about, things that you don't know that have value. Like Dean just expressed, that those micro units of solar panels and inverters and stuff have an immense value on that individual level. It's what allows your cup to overwhelm. It's what allows you to make those relationships with other people in the same environments that are dependent upon some of these devices and need a little bit of charging now and then. It's about helping people up, not putting your foot on them and holding them down.
Go get some of it this week legally for free and run your tractor, your generator, or your old diesel truck on it before the end of the month. Stay with me because I need to take you somewhere first. And when we get there, I promise you it will change how you see every diesel pump you have ever pulled up to. I spent an afternoon going through Rudolf Diesel's original patent, not a summary of it. The actual document, filed on February 28, 1892, titled Theory and Construction of a Rational Heat Engine to Replace the Steam Engine. What I found was not in engineering. It was in one line about fuel. Diesel did not write petroleum into that document. He wrote about plant oil. That was his intended fuel. That was the...
He did not write petroleum into that document. That's what they're hiding from you at that pump, folks. That is not diesel. That is petroleum. That they took diesel's name with this great product that he produced and converted it. That's not the diesel this man brought to the world. That diesel is a petroleum takeover, keeping the diesel silenced from you. Even the restaurant owners. That one ticket showed $6,600 for that 2,000 gallons. Or 2,200 gallons, $6,600 that the restaurant was just overlooking. They could have sold it themselves.
Design. And when I sat back and let that land, I thought about every diesel bill I have ever paid and felt something shift. This man built the most efficient combustion engine.
Instead, there was a time where some of these restaurants and places like that were selling or were paying to have that stuff taken away. They were paying to have it taken away, disposed of, dispositioned.
In history, and he built it to run in crops, not crude oil, crops. And in 1900, he proved it publicly at the World Exposition in Paris.
So you could literally grow a crop for your fuel purposes instead of having to dig a well for petroleum or purchase it from someone else. It was independence.
Paris. The French government asked him to run his engine on peanut oil from their African colonies, and he did. The accounts from people standing in that crowd kept repeating the same detail. The engine ran so quietly, so cleanly, that most of the audience had no idea that it was burning vegetable oil. Diesel told that crowd directly that his engine could be fed on vegetable oil and would help considerably in the development of agriculture. He was not speculating. He was describing what he had already built, a farmer's engine, an engine that was supposed to make petroleum irrelevant for anyone working land. He envisioned a world where a farmer in Senegal could press oil from peanuts he grew himself, pour it into his own engine, and power his entire operation without ever sending a dollar to a refinery. Energy independence rooted in the soil, not as a philosophy, but as an engineering reality that he had already demonstrated to a crowd of thousands in the center of Paris. For 13 years after that demonstration, Diesel traveled Europe promoting that vision. He spoke at agricultural conferences. He wrote that the vegetable oil engine would help considerably in the development of countries without domestic petroleum reserves. He understood that what he had built was not just a mere efficient engine. It was a transfer of power from the oil company to the farmer, from the refinery to the field. And then he boarded a ship and disappeared. So what happened next? September 29th.
Transfer of power, folks. And that's what you have to recognize. When you give up your responsibilities for those comforts and conveniences, that's a transfer of power, folks. That's why they say they have authority, because you gave them that power. When you have
communities all across this country could be doing this and growing their own hemp and sunflower and creating all kinds of their own energy and even their own pretty much, economy with these just natural stuff growing in the ground. And we've just gotten so far away from it, and there's all this land there just needing to be used. It's a really sad situation.
It is, and that's that power takeover. And people really need to realize, when you send your kids to a public education system and you like that comfort, convenience, you like it for the wrong reasons. You like it only for its comforts and conveniences, because it's in fact as detrimental as anything in this world.
It's 1913. Rudolph
In my strong opinion only, of course.
Diesel boards the steamer Dresden in Antwerp, Belgium, eats dinner, retires to his cabin at 10 in the evening, leaves word to be woken at 6:15 the next morning. When the steward knocks, the cabin is empty, bed not slept in, hat and overcoat folded neatly beneath the railing at the stern. 10 days later, a Dutch fishing crew pulls a body from the North Sea. His son identifies the personal items. Before he boarded, Diesel had given his wife a bag. She opened it after he was gone. Inside was 200,000 German marks in cash. The bank accounts were nearly empty, and in his diary, a cross was drawn on the date September 29th. The newspapers that week ran two kinds of headlines. Some said suicide. Others were more sinister. Inventor thrown into the sea to stop sale of patents to British government. Murdered by agents from big oil trusts. He has been traveling to meet with the British Royal Navy after installing his engines in their submarines. Engines that ran on plant oil. Engines that would have given the most powerful navy in the world a fuel supply that no oil company controlled. I'm not going to tell you what happened on that ship, because I don't know. But I will tell you what happened the week after.
Yeah, no one does know. And it's crazy how it works out, huh? This is how shit's hidden. I don't know anybody in the history of the world that upon committing suicide, they thought they were going to strip naked first. It just doesn't make sense. If you're going to commit suicide, why go through that effort?
After he was gone, not a single engine company pushed to keep plant oil as the standard fuel. The petroleum industry stepped in, adjusted the fuel systems, and made crude oil the default. Within a decade, every diesel engine in the world was burning petroleum. The engine designed to free farmers became the machine that chained them to a refinery. The man who would have asked why was at the bottom of the North Sea. Now it is crucial.
And it's quick and smooth.
Crucial that I share about three men whose names you already know. Because what happened after Diesel disappeared did not happen by accident or market forces alone. It happened because of a specific decision made in a specific room in 1924 by General Motors, Standard Oil of New Jersey, and the DuPont Chemical Company. And understanding that decision is the reason Gary, the diner owner I met in that Ohio county, was standing in front of two tanks of fuel he could not identify. Here's what you need to know, and I'll be honest with you, this is the part where I had to stop reading more than once and just sit with it. In the early 1920s, Charles Kettering was head of research at General Motors. One of the most respected engineers in the country, over 180 patents, the man who gave us the electric starter. And he believed something that, at the time, sounded like a countdown, that oil was going to run out. So his team started building engines to run on something else. Ethanol, grain alcohol, fuel you could grow, fuel.
Grain alcohol. Did you hear that? Grain alcohol, ethanol. What do we have today, guys? 85E, 85% ethanol gas. That's what they're doing. They're still taking over the diesel part, because even ethanol isn't as efficient as diesel. The engines that they have to make that can handle ethanol are much more extensive. You can still crank up an old diesel engine from the 20s today.
A farmer could produce himself, and they proved it worked. His lead researcher, Thomas Midgley Jr., drove a car from Dayton to Indianapolis on an ethanol blend just to demonstrate it. No issues, no breakdown. It worked
And that was from Ames, Iowa. When I tell you my mom was a federal agent, she worked for the labs there in Ames, Iowa, doing that type of stuff, both for the Department of Agriculture and the military.
exactly the way it was supposed to. And this is where the story shifts, because ethanol had one problem. You couldn't own it. Anyone with land and a still could make it. No patent, no control. No way to take a percentage of every...
Anyone in the land with a still could make it. Guess what, folks? In regards to the tap water, you distill your water, you don't have that problem. So you can pull your tap water, distill it, gets rid of all that shit, right? Now, if you got a few rows of corn out in the back 40, you can make your own fuel as well.
So I even pushed, I used to have a Subaru Outback that wasn't technically designed for the E85 fuel, but my research about it suggested it could take more ethanol than it did take from the regular gas pump. And so I would buy sort of I wouldn't fill up my tank with it, but I would do like half of the tank or maybe a quarter of the tank with the ethanol, the cheaper fuel, to save some money. And it never had a problem. It worked just fine. So,
absolutely. And
I do know the ethanol in the fuel does wear on the seals a lot quicker. It's much more corrosive. That's a problem when they put it in there. That was a big problem. And same with the biodiesel. It is very corrosive as well. So you've got these other issues that come from trying to mix petroleum in that I don't think you even have if you go straight vegetable oil. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and that's why they're talking about the diesel that comes from the restaurants. That's vegetable oil, and there are different oils, like I said, peanut oil. Peanut oil is another good one. You know, coconut oil. I would be amazed to find out what coconut oil does, but I would imagine that would burn a little bit hotter and might be a little bit more corrosive for that. But you know, all kinds of things.
Sunflower is supposed to be really good.
Yeah, all kinds of different oils, plant seed oils that we can use to make the fuels. And it's a matter of that diversity, you know.
Gallon burned. Tetraethyl lead was the opposite. Patentable, controllable, profitable. By 1924, General Motors, Standard Oil, and DuPont had formed a company to produce it. And I remember reading that and thinking, okay, that explains the decision. But then I kept reading. Workers handling the compound started getting sick. Some of them didn't recover. Scientists warned publicly that it was dangerous, and the response from the industry wasn't hesitation. It was acceleration. Leaded gasoline spread anyway. Reports showing ethanol worked just as well quietly disappeared. Studies weren't published, criticism wasn't restricted. And within a decade, the alternative was gone. Not because it failed, because it couldn't be owned. By the time I got to the late 1930s, the pattern was clear enough that I stopped trying to argue with it. The infrastructure that could have let farmers produce their own fuel had been replaced by one that required them to buy it. Every time.
Required them to buy it. That's how comfortable and convenient it is. It requires you to buy. That's the capitalism. You don't need it. The local economy doesn't thrive on capitalism. It thrives on barter exchange.
From someone else. Now, I want to bring you back to that parking lot in Ohio, because what I watched that morning is the direct continuation of what Diesel lost and what Standard Oil and DuPont finished. I asked the driver how many stops he made on that route. Around 24, he said. I asked what the collection company paid the restaurants. He paused. Some get a few cents a gallon. A lot of them get nothing. They just get to pick up for free. He said it completely casually, the way you say something that has long stopped surprising you. 24 restaurants, one morning, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,200 gallons of used cooking oil, handed over for nothing. Collected, filtered, and sold back into the fuel market at margins the driver described to me with a slight smile as very healthy. That smile told me everything. American restaurants produce approximately 11 billion liters of used cooking oil every year. I read that in EPA documentation and had to read it twice. The National Biodiesel Board confirmed that nearly 2 billion pounds.
11 billion gallons. 11 billion gallons. So you could technically start by just going around to local restaurants and gathering it up while you're growing your crops, getting your supply started.
Of it is already being converted into fuel annually. Airlines are burning it in jet engines. Long-haul trucking fleets are running on it.
And they'll likely let you haul it away for them.
refineries are competing to get their hands on it. The price on the commodity market has been climbing for years, which is why collection companies stopped charging restaurants for pickup and started paying them instead. When biodiesel first became viable, restaurants paid to have their grease hauled away. Paid. It was a waste disposal cost. And then at some point, the math flipped. The oil became worth more than the cost of collecting it. The payment disappeared. Then collection companies and competitive markets started offering restaurants money for their oil.
Now it's a competitive market. And that competitive market is still growing. It still hasn't reached all the restaurants. So like I said, there's plenty of restaurants that you can hit up locally that, hey, you can just get your own fuel.
Most restaurant owners have no idea why the calculation changed. The diner owner in that Ohio county, Gary, 22 years behind the same counter, walked me to the back of his kitchen and showed me 2 waist-high storage tanks of dark golden oil. Take whatever you want, he said. I used to pay $80 a month to have this hole. Now they take it free, and honestly, I don't know why they want it. I stood there for a moment just looking at those tanks. The oil was warm and amber-colored and utterly unremarkable to look at. Gary had been producing it every single day for 22 years and treating it as a disposal problem. The idea that it was a fuel, that it was the specific substance Rudolf Diesel had in mind when he drew his engine in 1892, had simply never entered the picture. I asked Gary if he had ever wondered what collection companies did with it. He thought about it, said he had always assumed they processed it somehow. Maybe biodiesel, he had heard the word, but the details had never seemed worth pursuing. It was waste. Waste gets collected by people who deal with.
Somebody else deemed it had value, but to him, it remained waste. When are you going to start seeing the value in your junk? When are you going to see that treasure? Another man's junk is just another man's treasure, right? Think about it. Where did that adage come from? Why is it so prominent?
Waste. I told him what the driver had told me in the parking lot. The $3 a gallon, 2 dozen restaurants on a single route. Very healthy margins. Gary looked at me with a specific expression of a man recalibrating something he had long ago filed under irrelevant. He shrugged, said, well, they can keep taking it. Still less hassle than paying $80 a month. Gary did not forget that his waste oil was fuel. It was never told. Nobody told him. The same way nobody told the generation before him. Or
nobody told him that it was fuel. That it had the value of fuel. What is your fuel today? 4 something for a gallon of diesel? 5?
Or the generation before that. From the moment Standard Oil and DuPont finished what they started in 1924, the knowledge that a diesel engine was designed to run on plant oil became a footnote, something the textbooks mentioned in a sentence before moving on to petroleum. And the footnote gathered dust for 100 years, while 11 billion liters of the original fuel accumulated in restaurant tanks and was handed to collection companies for nothing. I spent 3 days reading everything I could find about running diesel engines on straight used cooking oil, agricultural engineering literature, university papers, forums where people have been doing this quietly for years. And then I called a mechanic I've known for 15 years, Dale. Been working on farm equipment in this county longer than most of the farms have been operating. I asked him one question. Can you run a diesel engine on straight used cooking oil?
Another note here real quick, folks. I used to work for a automotive mechanic, and their shop heater ran on the disposed oils and stuff. So they would just dump it through a strainer to strain out off all the junk, and then just straight throw it into their burner for the heat. So it's not just engines, all kinds of things. Again, like I said, with the fermentation process of wines and stuff, you can turn around and turn those wines into shines. Now, the shine can be used for multiple purposes. Incense, mix it with some honey and some certain aromatic flower petals, and you can put it on a burner, and you got incense. You can drink it. I've used it in my mowers and weed whackers. All kinds of stuff.
Without processing it at all? He went quiet for 4 seconds. Then he said, depends on the engine. Those 3 words are the most practically useful thing I will share in this entire video. When Diesel designed his engine in the 1890s, he designed it around the physical properties of plant oil. Thick, viscous, slow-moving through the injection system. The mechanical fuel pumps of that era were built to handle it. The tolerances were wide. When petroleum diesel became the standard fuel in the early 20th century, it was thinner and faster moving. Engine design over the following decades was calibrated to that thinner fuel. Injectors became more precise. Tolerances tightened. By the late 1980s, modern diesel engines were built to work with petroleum diesel specifically, and not much else, which means there is a line in diesel engine history that runs roughly through 1990. On one side, engines built with tolerances to handle the higher viscosity of straight vegetable oil. pre-electronic injection, mechanical fuel pumps. The tractors, generators, and trucks designed in an era when diesel fuel itself was less refined than it is today. Dale said, your grandfather's tractor would probably drink that stuff and never complain. I laughed, but I wrote it down. On the other side, modern common rail injection systems, high-pressure electronic injectors, tight emissions tolerances. Straight vegetable oil in those systems can thicken in the injectors, cause deposits, and over time, do damage that is genuinely expensive to fix. Know your engine before you fill your tank. That is not a disclaimer. That is the whole thing. I have a diesel generator, 1980.
Know your engine. So again, another important aspect of doing this stuff is that, again, you're going to save expenses by knowing the engine alone. And if you know the engine and have the tools, you can do the mechanical work yourself too and save that expense. So the comforts and conveniences are what's tearing you apart. Your unwillingness to take on those tasks, even the mental tasks, are disturbingly detrimental to yourself, and you don't even know it. Again, in my strong opinion.
80s vintage, mechanically simple, exactly the engine Dale described. I sourced my first batch from a restaurant 8 miles from my house. The owner looked at me the way a man looks when he suspects he's being pranked, but is willing to see where it goes. He took me out back to a collection tank. Dark golden oil, still faintly warm. You want me to pay for it? He said. I said no, same as the collection truck does. He shrugged. Bring your own containers. The filtration setup costs $14. 2 buckets, 2 paint strainer bags in different micron ratings, a spigot fitting. Gravity does the work. Let the oil sit warm for a day before you filter it so the particles settle, then filter what remains. A farmer in central Pennsylvania named Howard has been running his tractor on collected restaurant oil since 2009, with exactly this setup. Not a single fuel system problem in 15 years. That's the whole system.
Not a single fuel problem in 15 years. That's not bad.
I warmed the generator and petroleum diesel for 10 minutes first. Cold, straight vegetable oil is more viscous, and starting cold asks more of the fuel pump than it needs to give. Warm the engine. Let the heat in the system bring the oil down before you switch over. Then I switched the fuel line to my filtered used cooking oil. The engine did not stall, did not cuff, made no sound to suggest they had noticed the change. I ran it for 45 minutes under real load from a circular saw and a shop light. The exhaust had a slightly warmer, more organic smell than petroleum diesel. The engine note was, if anything, marginally smoother. I went inside and sat down and thought about what I had just done. I had run a diesel engine on oil that a restaurant was giving away for free. Oil that cost me nothing. Oil that was already being produced in volumes of 11 billion liters a year across this country alone, most of it being handed to collection companies who were turning it into a commodity and selling it back into the fuel economy at margins they described with a smile. And here I was with a functioning engine and 4 5-gallon buckets that represented the fuel cost of exactly $0. Within 1 month, I had 3 restaurant sources, a filtration setup that ran itself, and enough fuel to carry my generator through a full winter of weekly use. Without
20 gallons with just the work. And the minimal expense in the equipment to strain it and contain it. Pays for itself rather quickly, I think.
spending $1 on petroleum diesel. My monthly diesel spend dropped from $180 to $40. Before I show you exactly where to find your first source this week, everything I have documented across this channel is now in one place. The stove, the wall, the water, the fuel. This. It is called the Amish Home System. Link in the description, but stay here because where Gary's oil ends up is the part nobody's talking about. The remaining $140 is money they used to blow from my wallet into the same fuel economy that took Rudolph Diesel's plant oil engine and handed it to petroleum. I found that symmetry quietly satisfying. Now here is the full picture of what was lost, and what is sitting behind restaurants in your county right now, waiting to be reclaimed. In 1892, Rudolph Diesel designed an engine specifically for plant oil and demonstrated it to the world in Paris. For 13 years, he built the case for a fuel supply that any farmer could grow himself. Then he disappeared from a ship in the North Sea. In 1921, Charles Kettering's research team at General Motors drove a car from Dayton to Indianapolis on a 30% ethanol blend specifically to demonstrate that alcohol fuel worked. 3 years later, Standard Oil and GM formed the Ethyl Corporation, chose leaded gasoline over ethanol because it could be patented, suppressed a government report documenting equivalent engine performance, and by the mid-1930s had put lead in 90% of all American gasoline. The 1933 USDA and Navy report showing alcohol blends were nearly identical in performance to leaded gasoline, but was never published. The 1925 Commerce Department report documenting worldwide successful alcohol fuel use was printed 5 days before the federal leaded gasoline hearing and never mentioned in the press.
And never mentioned in the press. Imagine that. Why would they never mention it in the press? Because the press is the one that's giving you the fake news, like I said earlier. It's going to be people like myself and yourself that want this information, talking and communicating and discussing these things together outside of the news media, that's going to spread this wealth of truth.
Federal Trade Commission issued an order forbidding competitors from publicly criticizing leaded gasoline in the commercial marketplace. By 1939, the Agrol ethanol plant in Kansas had closed. 2,000 stations selling plant-based fuel to Midwest farmers had vanished from the map. Same years, same industry, different weapons. Same result. The farmer who was supposed to grow his own fuel and pour it into an engine designed to run on it was instead sent to a filling station every week for the rest of the century. The collection companies that now pull up behind Gary's diner and fill 2,200-gallon tanks with oil.
So can you imagine how they used that to leverage later on in the 70s the mortgage default takeovers of the farmers? It's just one of those economic measures that they use to take over the property and make the people dependent upon that corporate system.
Well, that's part of a pattern of it being that way consistently, because they started doing that with the seeds. They made the seeds have to be bought every year instead of renewed from the ground. And that's and they did the same with the fuel, and then they went to the seeds. It's like, I don't know how a farmer can survive these days with any of that.
Exactly. That's why it's important to look at them heirloom seeds and stuff. And we're going to be talking about those things next. We're going to talk about the food gardens next.
That Gary would otherwise pay to dispose of are the direct heirs of a system that was built specifically to make sure Gary never knew what he was sitting on. You were never supposed to know any of this. You were supposed to keep pulling up to the diesel pump, keep watching the number climb every winter, and never ask who decided it had to be that way. We never cared to ask why the most efficient combustion engine ever built was redesigned around a fuel it was never intended to burn. Never asked why 11 billion liters of the original intended fuel is produced every year in American restaurants, and almost none of it reaches the farmers and workers who need it most. We never asked.
Almost none of it reached the farmers and marketers that need it the most.
Why a USDA report proving it worked was printed and filed away in 1933 without ever reaching a newspaper. And we never asked why the Federal Trade Commission once made it illegal to publicly say that a competitor's product worked just as well.
Made it illegal. Now, remember, that's the SEC that said that. They don't have the legislative power. They don't have the authority. Yet they made it illegal to say a competitor's product was just as good, if not better. Yeah, it's less convenient. You have to do a little work yourself, but it's better for you.
Rudolf Diesel asked that question in 1892 and answered it with a patent and a peanut press. Kettering's own researcher drove the answer from Dayton to Indianapolis in 1921. The Agrol ethanol plant in Atchison, Kansas, sold it at 2,000 stations across the Midwest until Standard Oil's lobbying and price manipulation shut it down in 1939.
Imagine that. We can't have that kind of competition in this capitalist society. That's the wrong kind of competition. Shut it down. Who's doing what? Is it the government doing that? Or is that corporatocracy?
USDA report proving fuel work was filed away in 1933 and never saw a print.
Well, it's the government's job. If it's the government's job to regulate commerce, but then the question becomes, what is the higher calling of government? Is it to secure rights of the people, or is it to regulate that commerce, or let that commerce get out of control? Because that what they allowed to happen moved more toward a monopoly.
Absolutely, and that's what we're actually talking about, folks. Is he's pinpointed it to the fact that this government is protecting the commercial aspects above the private rights aspects. This is why we have all these auditors out there in these public audits, and they're claiming it's private property. No, you have private rights. There are certain distinctions that people need to educate themselves on so they can see it for what it is. Otherwise, they don't see those kind of things. They say, well, they're doing both. They're doing both. No, they're not. They're not here to protect your rights. That's why it's so hard to get a civil rights claim in the courts. Just get it in the courts.
Press. And through all of it, long before restaurants collected used oil in tanks out back, the Amish were pressing seeds in Lancaster County the same way their families had done for 200 years. They did not read the government reports that were never published. They did not attend the industry hearings. They kept pressing oil from what they grew. The way Diesel said the world should work, quietly and without anyone's permission. The way they keep everything. The restaurants already have the answers sitting in tanks out back. It has been there every single day, produced fresh, handed over for nothing, while the collection trucks made their rounds and drove away with margins that made their driver smile. The only thing left between you and that fuel is the container and a conversation. If you can secure 50 gallons.
Yeah, if you can secure 50 gallons for yourself, how many gallons of gas do you go through a week? So if you got a restaurant or two that you're going around gathering that 50 gallons, how much is it costing you? But the transportation to get there and get it, your hauling expense and your equipment expense.
Yeah, a long time ago, I had the idea of, just creating a little bit of filter system in the back of a truck, small diesel truck, and you could theoretically travel all across the nation from town to town and just get free oil wherever you needed. And if you could, take care of it, you filter it and whatnot. I mean, depending on the rig, I guess you don't have to do much to it at all. I thought you had to turn it into biofuel at the time, but even that's not that difficult. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, they're easy conversions if you just educate yourself. Like I said, I learned about this stuff by my mom and dad showing me how to garden first, trying to grow the stuff first so I wouldn't have to go to the store to buy all the apples and shit like that, or walk around the country like Johnny Appleseed and planting trees all over the place. So when I came back, there were plenty of apples so I could make my own shine. That's the truth behind Johnny Appleseed, folks. He planted them trees not as a steward, but for his own altruistic means, that he's a traveler. And when he came back to that area, he wanted apple trees so he could make his own fucking shines. So the next one we got is Rob Greenwood. He's got, this is James Prigioni. I'm sorry. The Gardening Channel with James Prigioni. So go over and sub up to him. I just ran across him the other day, and he's got a nice video out. He's going to talk about, I planted a food forest garden 13 years ago. Here it is today. So he's going to show you what he's got from what he started. Oops.
What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. Today, I'm going to take you along for a full tour of my 13-year-old food forest. This isn't just a garden, it's a living ecosystem. Let's go!
Oh, that color.
13 years ago, this area was all grass, just a normal backyard. Check out what it looks like now. An abundant, productive food forest with some massive trees. Let's go through it, grab some harvests, and just enjoy a tour of this beautiful food forest. I gotta get to this apple tree over there. Let's just hop our way through one thing to the next, because these beds are a little overgrown, but I love beds that are overgrown. That means we got a lot of food growing. Right here, pan up a little bit, is the Williams Pride apple. This is my earliest ripening apple tree. I grow varieties that ripen early, mid, and late to keep that harvest always coming. This apple over here looks pretty decent. It is late July, and we're already getting harvests from this apple. That's why I love it so much.
So he's talking about diversity in the types of trees. So you have multiple seasonal harvests. Okay, so that's the importance of having diversity. So it's like tomato plants. Some tomato plants only ripen at one time at the end of the season. Others, they'll start ripening and you'll have a long ripen season where you'll constantly be getting ripe tomatoes as they grow and keep ripening.
We'll twist it off, grab an apple. You'll love to see it. Organic, homegrown apples in July. I mean, absolutely incredible. Swing over here. Let's check out these beds and this beautiful pepper hidden underneath this squash. Really nice. So peppers actually in the heat of summer like growing in the shade of other plants, because once the temperatures get above like 90, 95 degrees, the pepper flowers will fall off. But if you've got them shaded in an annual like the squash right here, not only can you get a double yield, but you can get a higher production on your peppers, and that's what it's all about. It's going to be laying some stuff around.
And that's what I was talking about with neighboring plants. So if you plant peppers in amongst your tomato plants that are growing tall, you can get the same effect. They're going to provide it with shade. This here he's using squash and melon type plants that have them large leaves. And you see, it looks like he's got some grapes back here. So it's in a nice shaded spot.
As I'm harvesting them, and I bet the chipmunks will probably come back and steal everything. So we'll hop over here. We've got just so many things growing. Stuff I don't even notice. Like, I mean, we've got onions here, red onion. Could be a little bigger, but still looking good. We've got squash, beautiful ones. Check this squash out. You'll love to see it. Nice looking squash. I'm gonna harvest this guy. Perfect size. I don't want it to get much bigger than this, but this is gonna be good eating. Check out on there. We've got some green beans, my dragon tongue beans. That's my favorite variety of all. Loaded with beans. I mean, there's so much production. Check these out right here. Ooh, look at the beauty on these things. I love it. so much. And what you guys gotta see next is the tomatoes. If you're in Jersey, like I am, you gotta have good tomatoes, because in New Jersey, that's one of the things we're known for. Yeah, some people call us the Garden State, but in reality, we should probably be the tomato state, because we've got some fantastic tomatoes. Look at this section. We've got 20 varieties of tomatoes growing in 20 square feet. I love this style of growing because one of the really cool things about tomatoes,
20 varieties in 20 square feet. They all grow very well together. Notice he's got them staked up on a net system. He's actually got lines, like monofilament lines hanging up there, and those tomatoes are actually vines. They will vine right up there just like a grapevine would. What's going on now? Well, let's do this. Come on.
you gotta have good tomatoes, because in New Jersey, that's one of the things we're known for. Yeah, some people will call us the Garden State, but in reality, we should probably be the Tomato State, because we've got some fantastic tomatoes. Look at this section. We've got 20 varieties of tomatoes growing in 20 square feet. I love this style of growing because one of the really cool things about tomatoes is that there's over 10,000 varieties. So when we grow like this and we grow them super dense, we could try so many different varieties of tomatoes. We're not stuck with just one variety. And when you grow them in trellises, just like I am right now, you're getting a lower yield per plant, but you'll get a higher yield for the square footage you have, because we're growing vertical. You pan up, there's just more and more tomatoes growing on this thing. Let me show you one of the tomatoes in the back over here real quick. This one is so productive. Look at the sets. I think this is the Bing. Look at that. Whoo! That's beautiful. Truss after truss after truss after truss. It has been a tough year for some of the varieties of tomatoes though, because it's been so humid and so hot, and we've had a lot of rain. As a result, some of our tomatoes have had some blight issues. But one of the great things about growing different varieties is that we grow some varieties that are resistant to things like blight, which is convenient because they wouldn't really have to worry about the issue. So when you grow a bunch of different varieties, there's almost like a level of insurance when it comes to your harvest, because when you grow some that are resistant to blight, some that are resistant to fusarium wilt, then you're almost always going to get a variety that really excels. Like this one right here. This is the cherry bomb tomato. It has much less disease.
That's the importance of heirloom seeds and diversity, using variety. In any terrain, you're going to find out by rotating the varieties, you're going to find out which ones will produce better, are more coexistent with that environment, the soil and everything.
Problems than my other tomatoes, because this one, it has what they call bomb-proof disease resistance to blight. So it performs fantastic. It's got some beautiful tomatoes on it. Oops. And boy, do these things taste good. Check out this thing right next to me. So it's pretty funny. This bed, I had some tomatoes in little pots here, and then I left them for too long. They rooted into the ground, and now this whole thing is just taken over with tomatoes. It was an accident, but it's all good. I do have a variety like the Mountain Magic in here, which is disease resistant. So we're still getting some tomatoes just from this little section. Pretty cool. And then next to me down here, this is an experiment that I'm running. You guys will never guess this experiment. I'm incredibly excited to share it with you. And I've mentioned it before, but this might be one of my coolest, most interesting experiments that I've ever run. And it won't be long till we bring you along for just how it went. Come over here. This pear tree is one of my most productive pear trees in the whole garden. This thing kicks out so much fruit. Last year, I got some incredible harvest.
And he mentioned experiments. This is the importance of having that knowledge and the experience, is once you gain that, you can start experimenting around. One of the things I mentioned was the combining of multiple fruits into one tree. You can splice pears into apples, apples into pears. You can splice most any tree into another tree. So you can end up with a tree. They've got a tree that's got 40 different fruits on it, 40 different types of fruits in one tree. So this is the epitome of what we're trying to put forth here on the Short Bus Podcast TV, is that the education is the value. The education, the experience, and the wisdom to know how these things works can help you diversify and come up with new things. Now, granted, you're not going to get one fruit off that tree that you're going to plant a seed and then end up with another tree with 40 fruits. That's not going to happen. But you can use space wisely by using, if you've only got space for one or two trees, you can splice a couple of those trees into, multiple fruit bearing and have multiple fruits for your family. So you don't need these huge acreages where you can have an orchard of pear trees or an orchard of apple trees or anything like that. You can have just a few trees and have them bearing multiple fruits.
From this, and the pears taste fantastic. It's an Asian variety, and boy, is it good. Right behind me too, we're in Jersey, so we got to go with the Jersey plum. That's what this one is right here. I think I might still have a few plums back here. Notice them over here, so still a few plums. So I'll grab like this one up here. We spray this one with the surround, and then we're able to get some fruit because the plum curculio will leave it alone. So let me get a bite of this one and just see how it tastes. Juicing on me a little bit. So sweet, so delicious. It's a mini plum, but it's also kind of feels like a giant cherry. Regardless, it's so dang good. Let's swing over here. So we've got our blueberries and stuff. One of the cool things about growing a garden like this is that I don't really do any watering on my perennials. The only perennials I really give any water are the strawberries when they're fruiting and the blueberries. When it comes to the fruit trees, I don't really have to water them, and that's because of the system we set up right down below us. It's all about building a good foundation. These wood chips build an incredible foundation for fruit trees because they can really retain the moisture. And when you've been putting wood chips in for years and years like I have, you can see, look how we go deeper. We're not even to where the actual soil was, the original soil. Deeper, deeper. This is all years of built up wood chips. This creates a perfect environment for fruit trees, brings in the mycorrhizal fungi, which helps build the association. Look at that, deeper and deeper.
This is part of that soil building when you build soil. You can do this in the desert, folks. You might have to haul in those wood chips, but it'll do the same thing. You can start building your soils.
We still have that color from wood chips. This is crappy soil into good soil without any extra work. Just let nature do it for you. Beautiful.
What's up, Dean? And Joe, welcome on up.
I did that kind of experiment. I've done it before, and it doesn't take long, even out in the desert, dealing with compost and whatnot, to create some different, some pretty good soil. I mean, it really does not take much effort to do such.
Oh, and that's one of the things that most people are afraid of. They think it does. But again, if you go back to your arboreal lifestyle as a natural creature, that's what we're meant to do. And it actually comes natural. You learn this kind of stuff naturally as you observe the nature around you. You see how trees and plants sprout up out of piles of the deadfall and stuff. You see how mushrooms come up and what they take advantage of. This is how we learned what we know today.
So that's why I really don't water my fruit trees. I only water them about the first 2 years I planted them. Then they tap into the water table, they tap into the mycorrhizal fungi, and we just let them do their thing. Another thing behind me, another event where I accidentally planted the wrong thing. I thought this was like a zucchini rampicante, a summer squash, but it's actually a winter squash. You can see the butternuts back there. So it's sort of taken over this whole section, but it's all good. We'll let it go because we know we're going to get a big harvest from it. I've got these butternut squashes literally everywhere. If you have problem growing squash, whether it's summer or winter, the winter squashes like the butternut are always going to be better with the vine borers because the winter squashes, they're a different kind of squash than the summer squash. They have much thicker stems and the squash vine borers don't like going after them as much. So this plant just absolutely crushes it. Come over here. We've got carrots down here we harvested just the other day. A few from, we'll grab another one. Let's just see what we got. Let's just see. Ooh, not bad. Looks like a nice yellow carrot. Love to see it. When I do these videos, some of my videos that I enjoy more than any other. I have so much fun with them, but it's a little different now without Tuck, because I would usually grab this. He would show up from, you know, who knows where. He would just know that I grabbed the carrot. He'd show up, I'd snap it, he'd grab some bites of the carrot. So it was always a lot more fun running around the garden with him, but it's still a blast to just be in the food forest and to share the growth with you, especially.
Yes, and like I mentioned earlier, we lost our beloved Eddie a couple days ago. Funerary expenses, and of course, recently having to move. We're kind of strapped tight. We're on a Dono Drive, so please hit the PayPal link, share a little bit of love, always appreciated. Trying to get the StreamYard link up so we can do full 10-panel broadcasts, podcasts, and do these debates on what we're looking at in the future for this off-grid living and the technology.
If you've been here for a while. If you have or haven't, hit that subscribe button so you can follow along for not only the progress on this one, you know, 2 years later when it's 15 years, 16 years, 17 years, but also we've got that new 10-acre property. We're setting that up. We're going bigger. We're investing everything into it, and you gotta follow along because that place is gonna go from 0 to, I guess, hero, pretty much. Let's go this way. Let's check out what we got back here. Over here is a pallet bed. This is one that I built just out of one small pallet. It's got a huge squash in it. The squash took over the bed, but the idea is that you don't need a lot of space to grow a lot of food, and you don't need a lot of money. And we built this bed for free, and we're getting a lot of food from it. You'll love to see some beautiful zucchini just like that. Swing over here. This bed we're starting to set up for a next round. You can see our next round of squash out right here, and you can probably hear a plane above. We're right by the shore, right by the beach, so they love flying up some of their banners. We won't show it too much because we're not going to give them the advertising, but you know, there's always something flying above over here where we're at. And then the cucumbers. New round of cucumbers looking good. New round of squash. Beets in the back, but we've also got that other round of beets. Look at these. Look how beautiful these are growing. We'll grab one of these. These are the orange beets.
And when he's talking about rounds of beets and rounds of squash and stuff, that you can plant one round in 1 month and then wait a month and plant the next round. And if you do it right, you'll have a couple rounds that will harvest in succession. So you have a longer season of harvesting those particularly, so you can use the same space and get 2 harvests.
And I've cut into one and they look so dang beautiful. Look at that big, gorgeous harvest of beets. We love to see it. Swing back over to that keyhole bed. Let's check that baby out. It's a keyhole bed, but you probably can't even see it because things are overgrown so much. In here, we've got some squash that are sneaking in, like some patty pans. Grab that one right there. We've got another one back here. That looks good. We won't grab that one. This bed is just loaded. There's so much stuff in here. And it's mostly all of our summer stuff. We'll let this continue to go as we start setting up and getting some of our fall stuff planted. Once the summer stuff really slows down, we'll swing in and get the summer and get the fall stuff in. You notice we've got another pepper right here. I usually grow most of my peppers in containers, but I threw some in beds this year just to fill the spaces, and we're just grabbing some harvest from them. Behind me, I've got
just to fill the spaces. So sometimes, like he's pointing out, sometimes you've got spaces you can fill and be even more productive. And that's a carryover of that diversity I was talking about. It's important to understand that the more you learn and the more you put into it, the more prosperous you're going to be. That's the point of replenishing in our true nature.
Got a few more cucumbers. It's been a bit of a rough year for cucumbers, but we're still getting some nice harvests. We'll grab a few of these and another one here. You'll love to see it. And there's even more beets over here. These are the white beets. We'll let those go a little longer. But yeah, I mean, this food forest looks insane. The focus on this food forest is more towards annuals. As we move into the other food forest, you'll notice things are a little bit different, and that's why, I mean, there's a purpose for it. There's a reason we designed it that way. Let's move over to the older food forest.
Greetings, new
And before
guru.
we get into it, check this out right here. Look at the growth on the squash. It's incredible. This is the white scallop squash. Check out the peppers right here. They're doing well. The basil here. And then on the backside, we've got this tomato growing out the side, doing really well. I mean, yeah, that's nice, but take a step back and notice this is the raised bed that we built for like less than $2. So going back to what I said before, you don't need a lot of money to grow some of your own food and get a high level of production. One small bed, letting stuff drape off the sides, and look at all this food. I think it's just incredible. Let me bring you back to this corner over here. We've got some cucumbers that are doing well. If you come through here, along this fence line, check out all these healthy looking cukes. Look at this guy. This is a perfect shaped one. Look at these ones over here. Looking really, really nice. I've even got some beauties on the backside, like this one. Check it. That is the ideal looking cucumber. Grab a harvest of that. If we snap this open and took a bite of it, it'd be so refreshing and so juicy, because cucumbers are 95% water, and they'll really
95% water.
That's why they're like the best cooling snack in the heat of summer. Come back here, we've got some more cucumbers, but I think we've seen enough of that. Just take a step back actually a little bit and check this out right here. Here's another mountain magic tomato. Look at the color and the health of it. Look at how nice the tomatoes look. It's got good disease resistance. It's a delicious tomato. Overall, it's one of my all-time favorites. You guys got to get this one in the garden if you've never grown it. The mountain magic. Also, right now is the perfect time, because these tomatoes are in a high level of production. They're going to keep producing because this is an indeterminate variety. It will continue to produce flowers and fruit up until a frost. So we still have 80 days left at least, basically, to be growing this tomato. We want to make sure we're keeping it well fed so it can keep us well fed. I mean, simple. For that, it's a great time to do a top dressing of some all-purpose fertilizer. Obviously, I like the JP Secret stuff because
Crafted for organic gardening, JP Secret stuff. All-purpose fertilizer. Advanced formula. Azomite. Says Tuck approved. And I imagine it's one of his fertilizers. So I imagine it is fully organic from his very own property.
I mean, it's my own fertilizer, and it's the one that gives me these levels of production. I mean, just look at the stuff in here. It's growing amazingly, and it's all organic. Check out this Liberty apple tree. This is the most disease-resistant apple tree on the planet. That's what people call it. So if you have problems growing apples, I suggest getting the Liberty in. When it comes to fruit trees, it's something that's been...
Liberty apple tree. That'll be an easy one to remember. Liberty apple tree.
It's one of the most cliche sayings ever. I mean, people say it all the time, but the best time to plant a fruit tree is like 7 years ago. The second best time is today. So this video is to encourage you to get stuff planted. You don't have to plant a food forest all at once, but one tree at a time, then add another one, then a bush, and everything accumulates. You're either accumulating value or you're accumulating debt or loss or regret. So I say we accumulate value. It's the way to go.
Absolutely. Little by little, step by step, day by day. Just like the 12-step program says, day by day. You don't have to do everything that you need in a year in one day. That's impossible. So plan for the year each day, one day at a time.
Check this out right here. We've got an apple tree, but notice hanging from it. Look at this zucchino rampicante. This is insane. Look at this thing. Look at this thing's got to be 4 feet long. It's hilarious looking. And this is another one of those squash it's in the same family as the winter squash, so it has that hard stem, so the squash vine borers hate it, but you can eat it as a summer squash. I consider it to be one of the most versatile squash there are out there. And if you want summer squash but you have a problem getting it because the vine borers just decimate your plants, try this one. Try the zucchino rampicante. It might make all the difference for you. Let's swing over to the Vego trellis because we've got some beautiful grapes up here. I mean, look at some of these sets. Look at over here. Whew, look how gorgeous that is. The grapes are...
Man, what I wouldn't give to have some grapes on my own property again. I remember growing up with grapes and it was just awesome to be out playing around in the neighborhood and being able to stop by and grab some grapes.
getting big. They look beautiful. Check out some of them up here. There's so many of them growing in this trellis. And check out right here. There was a bird's nest here, which is cool. We always have robins that are, you know, raising families in here, but it's kind of funny. The robins, like, they come here, the parents, they lay their eggs, they hatch their new young, but then they end up coming back and stealing some of our grapes. So it's pretty funny, but when you have a garden like this, it's tough to keep things out because not only is it a food forest, not only is it a paradise for people, but it's a paradise for all living things. It's a
Absolutely. So when you're off grid and you're living this kind of lifestyle, be aware you're going to attract not just the birds, but the critters on the ground as well. You're going to see the moles, you're going to see the rats, you're going to see the mice, you're going to see the ferrets, you're going to see the squirrels, you're going to see these critters all over the place, possums, raccoons, skunks. Be aware, it's their world too.
living, breathing ecosystem. It's moving, it's not static. It's just an incredible thing to be a part of. Check out down here, we've got our pole beans growing this next round. They're looking beautiful. They're going to grow up over this trellis and just fill this space in, and we're going to get food from it. Swing to your right. There's a few things that have happened over the years. One of them, as you come in here, is the hazelnut trees and some of the perennials in here have gotten massive. They're so big. You'd be thinking that's not a good thing, but actually it has always been part of the design. This garden is on the north side. So if we grow tall things, they won't shade that other garden out. The other garden over there has some perennials on the edges, but we left more of the center to grow a lot of annuals. This area has a lot of big perennials, but that's always been the design because the perennials take much less work. And the majority of the work for perennials is during the winter. Let's come over here. And the majority of the work for the annuals is in the summer. So it's like the perennials, we do some work in the winter and they pay off for us in the summer. The annuals, we do some work in the spring and pay off in the summer too. But regardless, we're like working on the two different annuals and perennials at different times of the year. Right here, we've got a beautiful pear tree, the Chajuro. This one is always so productive. It's got some pears on it. They'll be ready later, probably like October, November. And then back here, we've got the persimmon tree. This one is so gorgeous. It's absolutely massive. This is the Nikita's Gift. It's a hybrid of both the American persimmon and the Asian one. So it's an incredible variety.
Man, that looks so good. You ever had persimmon? Oh, man. Mouth is watering.
I love this persimmon tree and I love that it's taking over. This other hazelnut over here has gotten large too. It was completely loaded with hazelnuts, but the chipmunks and the squirrels have done a number on it. So I don't think we're gonna get that many this year. Regardless of the tree, it looks beautiful. Fig tree doing really nice too, has gotten absolutely huge. And I mean, you gotta have figs. They look just gorgeous.
Yep, gotta have figs.
Bring you over to a section in the back. Look how big the Prigioni apple has gotten, and it's loaded with fruit. I planted this thing from seed when I first started the garden like 13 years ago, and it's just so cool to see a tree that you planted from seed and then hang out in the shade of it and grab some delicious fruit from it. Let me bring you over to some stuff over in this bed. So we're transitioning some of the beds from summer over to fall. So we pulled a few of the things out so we can get our brassicas and some of our cold hardy stuff and fall things in. We still have some young things like some squash growing here because we still have time to get a harvest. And we also have some squash over here. And then when it comes to my annuals and watering in these beds, I've got the Vego irrigation kit set up, so I don't really have to do that much work. This way, there's not a lot of watering that needs to be done like by hand. It's, you know, the mulch takes care of it and so does the watering system. You'll notice this cherry tree has lost a lot of leaves. It always happens around this time of year. I believe it's because of a blight issue, but also there's an underlying issue of the garden symphyllin being in the ground, and I think they stressed the tree out just a little bit. Come over here though. Check this out. The size of this sunflower. It just opened yesterday. I mean, it's got to be well over 10 feet tall. I never even planted this. It came up from seed as a volunteer, an absolute gift from nature and the garden. There's nothing like beautiful.
So you can start out and nature will give you a gift. Like you said, it's a gift from nature, sprouted up on its own. And now he's got a packet of seeds that he can plant to produce an entire garden. And like Dean and I were talking about earlier, press the seed oils for a little bit of fuel. Never know. You never know what nature's going to bring you.
Flowers coming up, volunteers, gorgeous. Look down here. Well, first actually look to the left because we've got some more apples. Here's another apple tree, a young one, 4 years old, I think, and still producing, maybe 5. So you guys got to get trees in now so they can give fruit to you soon. Back here, we planted a bunch of squash to sort of take over this back area, and that's exactly what's happening. Mixed in there's echinaceas. You might even miss some of these. Like, look at this. This is a healthy blueberry right here. I got to take the morning glory out, but this beautiful blueberry. Another apple tree right here. There's a Honeycrisp. I think this one's going to have a lot of fruit next year, so I'm excited for it. There's a lot of stuff growing back here. Overall, the food forest is doing incredible. We've got some blackberries in the back. There's just so much food, and things are growing so prolifically, it's literally hard to keep up. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope.
Literally hard to keep up. And that's the intense labor I was talking about earlier. It's something that you got to do all day long, every day. You don't get a day off. It's yours. You are liable for it 7 days a week. So it's a matter of understanding and undertaking those responsibilities and shedding off that comfort and convenience that you so wantonly project and embed in your own self. The next one I've got is the humble farmer. Let me get over here. And it is the humble farmer. So go over and check him out. Every farmer used pesticide spray. The old farmer planted a bug barrier for $4 and saved his field. So again, it's the information and knowledge, experience and wisdom to be able to stand in what you already know and not take upon the comfort and convenience of a pesticide.
The bugs didn't arrive all at once. That's what made them dangerous. If they had come in a wave, visible and overwhelming, people would have responded immediately. They would have recognized the threat, acted fast, and treated it like a problem that demanded attention. But this wasn't that kind of invasion. It started quietly. One row, then another. Small signs that were easy to ignore if you weren't looking closely. Leaves with uneven edges. Spots that didn't belong. Sections of plants that didn't grow as evenly as the rest. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that stopped the field from looking healthy at a glance. That's how it slipped through the first week. By the second week, the pattern had spread. Still not obvious from a distance, but clear enough when you walk the rows. That's when people started talking about it. Seeing anything on your side? One farmer asked at the edge of a neighboring field. Little bit, the other replied. Nothing serious yet. That word, yet, carried more weight than they realized. Because pests don't stay small. They grow. They multiply. And when they do, they don't ask if you're ready. By the third week, the damage wasn't something you had to look for anymore. It was there, visible. Sections of fields showing stress. Leaves thinning. Growth slowing. That's when the first spray went out. It started with one field, then two, then the rest. Because once one farmer sprays, the others follow. Not out of fear, out of understanding. They've seen this before.
Not out of fear, out of understanding. They've seen this before. No, if they had understanding and they've seen this before, they might have stuck to their natural ways. Preempted it. Prevention. Knowing what they're doing to begin with by not making such huge fucking fields. That is not meant in nature.
They know what happens if you wait too long. The rigs came out early in the mornings. Long passes across the fields, mist trailing behind them, settling over rows that had looked fine just days before. It was precise, measured, controlled. The way it always is when something needs to be stopped quickly. At the diner, the conversation shifted from noticing the problem to dealing with it. You spraying yet? Someone asked. Yesterday, another answered. Didn't want it getting ahead. What are you using? They listed names, products, ratios. What worked last year? What didn't? What might work better this time? That's how it always goes. Shared experience, shared solutions, shared direction. Everyone moving the same way. Everyone except one.
Everyone moving the same way, except for one. The importance here in this lesson is to understand that sometimes the group as a whole is in fact wrong. Everybody else is wrong, and I am right.
Eli Turner sat at the end of the counter, listening, not adding to the conversation, not correcting it, just hearing it, because he had seen the same signs, walked the same rows, noticed the same damage. But he wasn't reaching for the same solution. Eli, you spraying? Someone asked, turning slightly toward him. He shook his head. Not yet. The man frowned slightly. You waiting for it to get worse? Eli took a sip of coffee before answering. No. Then what are you doing? Eli set the cup down. Something else. That answer didn't land. Because something else doesn't tell people what they need to know. It just tells them you're not doing what they are. And in farming, that's enough to make people pay attention, but not enough to make them understand. Eli's field sat just beyond the main stretch of land most of the others worked. Not separate, just positioned differently. Same soil type, same conditions, same exposure to the same problem. The bugs didn't skip his land. They were there, same as everywhere else. That's what made his choice stand out more. Because he wasn't avoiding the problem, he was facing it differently. The next morning, instead of pulling out a sprayer, Eli drove into town. Not to the supply store. To a smaller place most people didn't think about for something like this. A seed supplier. Not the kind that dealt in large-scale crops. The kind that handled smaller varieties. Specialized. Less common. He walked in, looked around briefly, then approached the counter. Got marigolds? He asked. The man behind the counter looked up. Yeah. He said slowly. How many you need? Eli thought for a second. Enough to line a field. The man blinked. You serious? Eli nodded. Yeah. The man hesitated. Those aren't for decoration? He asked. Eli shook his head. No. The man looked at him for a moment longer, then turned and started gathering what he had. That's not going to cover much, he said. I'll take what you've got, Eli replied. The total came to $4. Not because they were expensive, because they weren't. That's what made the decision seem even more out of place. By midday, Eli was back in his field. Not spraying, planting. He started at the outer edge. Not in the middle. Not scattered. A line. Consistent. Controlled. He worked his way around the perimeter, row by row, not rushing, not trying to finish quickly, because this wasn't something that worked immediately. It wasn't a reaction. It was a setup. From the road, it looked strange. Not wrong. Just different. Bright patches of color starting to form along the edges of a field that should have looked like every other one. That's what caught attention. Not because it stopped the problem, because it didn't look like it would. You planting flowers now? Someone called out as they drove past. Eli didn't stop. Something like that, he said. The man laughed. Hope the bugs appreciate it. Eli didn't respond. Because that wasn't the point. The first few days didn't show anything. That's what people expected, because whatever he was doing didn't look like it would work. The bugs were still there, still moving, still feeding. Inside the field, nothing had changed. That's what people saw when they walked through. That's not doing anything, someone said. Eli nodded. Not yet. That answer sounded familiar, because it was the same word they had used before. But this time, it meant something different. By the end of the week, the sprayed fields began to show results. The damage slowed. The spread reduced. That's what chemicals do. They act fast. They stop what's there. That's why people rely on them. Eli's field didn't show that change. Not immediately. The bugs were still present. Still active. That's what made people certain. He's going to lose that field, someone said. Trying to save money is going to cost him everything, another replied. Eli kept working the same way. Watching, not reacting. Because what he had planted wasn't meant to remove the problem instantly. It was meant to change how the problem behaved. By the second week, something shifted. Not in the center of the field. At the edges. The marigolds had taken. Small. Not fully grown. But established. That's when the first difference appeared. Not in the plants. In the movement. The bugs weren't entering the field the same way. Not as many. Not as easily. That's what Eli noticed first. Not the absence. The change in pattern. He walked the perimeter slowly, watching how the insects approached. Where they moved. Where they didn't. Because bugs don't just attack randomly. They follow signals. Smell. Color. Attraction. And what he had planted was interfering with that. By the third week, the difference became visible. Not dramatic, but clear. The spread inside Eli's field had slowed. Not stopped, but contained. While the sprayed fields were holding steady, they required reapplication. Another round. More coverage. Because chemicals don't last. They control. Then they fade. Eli's barrier didn't fade. It grew. At the diner, the conversation shifted again. You see Eli's field? Someone asked. Still standing, another said. Doesn't make sense. That's when people started paying attention, not to what he was avoiding, to what he was doing. Because the thing that didn't look like it would work was starting to hold. And the thing everyone had relied on was starting to require more than they expected. That's when the difference began to matter, not in theory, in result. And over the next days, that difference would become something no one could ignore anymore. Because the problem wasn't just the box. It was how you chose to deal with them. And Eli's way was about to prove why it worked. The third week didn't bring a sudden shift. It didn't turn Eli's field into something untouched or perfect. That's not how it worked. The bugs were still there. If you walked into the rows and looked closely, you could still find damage. Still see where they had fed. Still notice where growth had slowed slightly compared to what it should have been. But the difference wasn't in what was there. It was in what wasn't spreading. That's what changed everything. Because while the other fields had slowed the problem with spray, they hadn't changed the pattern. They had interrupted it. Stopped it temporarily. And now, as the effect of the chemicals began to fade, the same pressure started to build again. Not as strong as the first wave, but present. Enough that another round was needed. That's the part people don't always account for. The second application. And sometimes the third. Because stopping something once doesn't mean it's gone. It just means it's waiting for the next opening. At the edge of Eli's field, the marigolds had grown enough to become visible from a distance. Not tall, not dense, but consistent. A line that wasn't there before. A boundary that didn't match anything else around it. That's what people noticed first. You see that? Someone said, slowing their truck as they passed. Whole edge lit up. Still think it's going to work? Another asked. The first man didn't answer right away. He just kept looking. Don't know, he said finally. But it's not getting worse. That was new. Because for weeks, everything had been getting worse before it got better. Eli stood at the edge that same morning, watching the movement. Not of the crocs. Of the insects. He didn't try to count them. Didn't try to track them individually. He watched the pattern. Where they approached. Where they clustered. Where they changed direction. That's what the barrier was doing. Not stopping them entirely. Redirecting them. Confusing the path. Disrupting the signal that told them where to go. Because insects don't think the way people do. They respond. To scent. To contrast. Eli's field didn't show that same stress. Not because it was untouched. Because it hadn't been forced through the same cycle. The barrier didn't shock the system. It adjusted it. That's what.
So just like the previous video that I mentioned, the certain plants that you put in with other plants as neighboring plants to help each other. This is one of those situations where you plant marigolds to prevent pest infestations.
People started asking different questions. Not why didn't you spray, but what exactly did you do? Eli didn't explain it in detail. Not because he was keeping it to himself. Because it wasn't complicated. I planted something the bugs don't like, he said. That's it, someone asked. Eli nodded. That's it. That answer didn't satisfy everyone. Because simple answers rarely do. But it was enough for some. A few farmers tried.
And that's another important aspect, again, of the Short Bus Podcast TV and these debates is going back to that simplicity. Getting rid of some of these technologies. And as we see here, poisons and stuff. The simple techniques sometimes are the most unbelievable because we have become so far distracted from these simplicities that we think it's super imposing upon us and our comforts and conveniences. Oh no, we can't get out there and spend all day planting marigolds. We've got to go get this this herbicide, this pesticide, and go spray the fields. It's going to take us all fucking day to spray the fields.
Not full fields, just edges. Small.
This is the long game. This is the long game. Like I said, now he's got $4 expense, and the energy and labor that he spent planting these. And do you think he's going to do it again next year? Absolutely not. Because those marigolds will now self-seed around the border of his field.
Sections, testing, watching.
And grow again next year, and he's already done the labor. And he's already paid the expense. It's already paid for. How minimal of an expense can you make out of it? See, these guys are talking about doing it 2 or 3 times a season. What about next year when it happens again? Are you gonna listen to this guy next time?
The same way Eli had, because that's how change happens here. Not all at once, one decision at a time. By the 6th week, the difference had settled. Not growing, not shrinking, holding. That's when it became clear. Eli's field wasn't winning because it was better. It was winning because it didn't require as much. No second application, no repeated intervention, no constant adjustment. It was maintaining itself. That's what people had missed. Not the cost of the spray, the cost of maintaining what the spray started. One evening, a farmer stood at the edge of Eli's land longer than usual, watching, not speaking. Then finally, "You think this works every time?" he asked. Eli looked out across the rows. "No," he said. The man nodded slowly. "But it worked this time," he said. Eli nodded. "Yeah, that's the part people often overlook. There isn't one solution for everything. There's just the right solution for what you're dealing with." The harvest came without interruption. No last-minute damage. No sudden spread, just steady progress. Eli's field didn't produce more than the others. It produced the same, but with less take.
Just steady progress. In case you don't know the story of the tortoise and the hare, that is about the long game.
Taken out of it to get there. That's what made the difference. Not the result, the cost of reaching it. At the diner, the conversation had changed completely. Not about what people had done, about what they would do next time. I might try that along the south edge, someone said. Can't hurt, another replied. Costs less than a second spray. That's how it shifts. Not through argument, through outcome. Eli didn't take credit for it, didn't explain it beyond what it was. Because he hadn't invented anything new. He had just used something that had been there the whole time. Ignored, because it didn't look like a solution. That's the part that stayed with people. Not the flowers, not the cost. The idea that not every problem needs to be forced into submission. Some just need to be redirected. By the next season, more fields had edges that didn't match the rest. Lines of color where there hadn't been any before. Not decoration, function. Eli walked his field the same way he always had.
Imagine that. More fields were lined with color. Observance is a great teacher, folks. I just wish you'd open your eyes and ears.
Not faster, not differently, because the lesson hadn't changed, just the attention around it. And the thing that cost him $4 didn't just save his field. It changed how people looked at the problem. Not as something you attack harder, but something you understand better. Because sometimes, the simplest solution isn't the weakest. It's the one that works without needing to be repeated. And that is what holds, long after
And that's what holds long after everything else fails. The next one I got coming up is 30 plus survival foods to grow in your garden. But before we do that, I got to take a quick break. Please enjoy the Short Boss Podcast TV. I'll be right back.
Step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the id wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with the surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High etiquette held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Bus Podcast TV. See the mirror for what it is. The progression begins now.
Man up, slaves, and hit those buttons, or I'll send ice.
Today, I am going to introduce you to
Okay, this is Rob Greenfield. Sorry for the silence there. This is my friend Rob Greenfield. I want you to go over and check him out. The link is down in the chat for everybody. And we're going to get into this guy. He's gone around the nation wearing the trash that he produced. He did a nice hike and started out with zero trash. And then every bit of trash that he produced, he kept it with him and started and wore it on his trek. So he's a very deep into the stewardship aspect. He's got a great mental attitude towards this, great personality, character, and everything. And he, again, is another one that is doing this. So go check him out. 30 plus survival foods to grow, to live on in your garden.
"30 of the easiest to grow, most abundant foods here in Florida." We're talking about the survival garden. We're talking about starting your own food forest so you can break free from the grocery store, break free from the global industrial food system, and never have to go grocery shopping again. This is yucca or cassava, and if you want to really eat from your garden and break free from the grocery store, then this is the plant to grow. It produces tubers like potatoes, but they're twice as calorically dense as potatoes, and they are delicious. Like, I crave this. You can boil them, you can mash them, just like anything you would do with potatoes. You can also dehydrate them and make a flour for making things like tortillas,
Greetings, tribe.
flatbreads. This is a staple food for 1 billion people around the world. People have grown it for thousands of years. It's an incredibly important plant. And another thing that a lot of people don't know is the leaves are actually edible as well if you cook them, if you boil them like chaya. They have cyanide in them. There's cyanide in the roots, and so they have to be cooked, and you have to know how to work with the plant. What's incredible about yucca is you can just take a piece of the branch or a cutting and just stick that in the ground, and then you can get a dozen pounds of yucca out of that. So you just need to start with a few cuttings, and over a little while you can make a yucca forest, and you can break free from the grocery store with this plant. Here we are with katuk, and a lot of people assume that all greens taste the same. That is not the case. A lot of greens taste wildly different from one another, and katuk has its own unique flavor. It also has its own unique nutrient profile. So this is a wonderful one to have in the garden. I like to eat it raw in salads. I also will throw it in with my sauteed greens into my soups. I don't eat this one in endless quantities, but I eat a good amount of this. Another really wonderful thing about katuk is that it grows really well in the shade. So this is a great one to put into understory. It's a great one that can be under the shade of large trees.
These are natural native type plants that he uses for a lot of this stuff. You're not going to see him using garden stuff like tomatoes, though he does that. He's more into this more natural plant life.
And it actually thrives in shade. You can see this katuk is beautiful. It's loving it. You can grow hedges of this, or you can grow small sections, and you can easily have, well, actually, katuk is a little bit of a tender one sometimes, but once you've got it established and you find the right place, endless katuk. I'm going to talk about 2 varieties of mulberry, and I love both of them. They have their own benefits. This is the dwarf ever-bearing mulberry. What I love about this is it puts out berries for a pretty good amount of time, like often a few months, and it can put out sometimes at multiple times of the year. And the berries, they're delicious. They are very nutritious. So I love these for community gardens, front yard gardens. If you want to engage the community and you want to introduce people to picking fruit straight from the trees, and you want smallish trees, dwarf ever-bearing mulberries are one of my favorite. Now,
so if you're going to have any kind of plants in the front of your home as invitations, it's your consistent bearing plants like this. Even the tomatoes that were mentioned in one of the previous videos, that fruit continuously, and that invites your neighbors, including if you want those neighbors such as the wild animals. You put those on the perimeters, and those are the ones that are going to attract them.
we are at another variety of mulberry, and this is a Florida variety. There's a lot of different varieties out there. These are going to have much larger berries. They tend to be, from my experience, a lot sweeter. I love these mulberries. And this tree that I'm standing at has only been in the ground for 2 years. So the mulberries are very quick to produce, great for being early establishing trees in a food forest. The other thing to mention about the Florida varieties versus the dwarf everbearing, the dwarf everbearing has nematode issues. These, if you find these are generally nematode resistant. And so these often thrive a lot more than the dwarf everbearing varieties. Here we have sweet potato, and I could never, ever get sick of sweet potato. I have eaten hundreds of pounds of sweet potato from Florida gardens, and I love it. Of course, you know that the sweet potato itself is edible, high in calories, more nutritious than regular potatoes, people say. And for me, just a little bit more delicious. But what a lot of people don't know is you can also eat the greens. And when you combine the greens and the potato, you have a whole lot of food, a whole lot of nutrients, a whole lot of sustenance coming out of this crop. Variety is key. Some varieties produce a lot, and some varieties do not produce so much when it comes to the tuber. But if you have a variety that doesn't produce a lot of tuber, you can still be eating greens. Last thing I want to say, from about a 4 foot by 8 foot bed, like a typical garden bed, it's possible to get about 40 pounds of sweet potatoes. So you can grow a lot of sweet potatoes. What I'm surrounded by might look just like a patch of weeds or a blanket of green, but this is actually a perennial spinach, a spinach that can produce spinach year around and is basically eternal. This just covers the ground, and from one or a few cuttings.
One of the great ones, folks. Spinach. Spinach, one of the great ones.
This is over 10 feet by 10 feet of spinach growing all over. Longevity spinach, it's great for filling salad bowls, it's great for sauteing. If you want to have a lot of greens, the perennial spinaches go a long way. I'm here with Okinawa spinach, and this was actually the first plant that really introduced me to the idea of permaculture. I was in Hawaii, and someone said, this is a bed of spinach that produces year-round, and when you pick it, it actually produces more rather than taking away from it. And that was a pretty wild concept to me about 10 years ago. So I'm elated to share this plant with you. It's prolific. Both of the longevity and Okinawa spinaches can have diseases. They can die back. They can be cold sensitive, but they often come back, or you can just always have some cuttings to get them to come back. I love the purple, the vibrant purple on the Okinawa spinach. And these are some of the easier greens to grow in Florida. Rosemary. It's a medicine when you eat it, and it's a medicine when you smell it.
So it's not just a food source that we're talking about. Again, it's that diversity of the plants that provide medicinal support.
This is a plant that's known around the United States and even much of the world. It is a wonderful herb. You can use it fresh, you can dry it, and it's incredibly resilient. This grows into whole hedges, and once you start to grow your rosemary, you'll never, ever have to buy rosemary from the store again. In fact, in some areas, I almost think it's a crime to buy rosemary at the store when you have hedges and bushes full of this absolutely wonderful herb. I'm here with my friend, the Southern.
And that goes for a lot of your different herbs. You can go out. Excuse me. You can go out into your nature areas. Excuse me. You can go out to your nature areas and find a lot of this stuff when it comes to things like even catnip. If you've got cats, you don't need to buy that stuff from the store. Start taking those hikes and see your nature areas. See if you can't find some of that catnip out there. Mint. All kinds of stuff.
Pea or the cow pea, and a lot of plants have many benefits. It's not just food and medicine, it's also plants that work with the earth, that help us be stewards of the earth. So southern pea or cow pea is a ground cover. It covers the ground, which helps to prevent the soil from getting baked out by the sun, helps with water retention, and this is a nitrogen fixer, so it helps to add nitrogen to your soil, which is one of the key things that plants.
My apologies there. I forgot I muted it because I was coughing there. But he mentioned stewards. Be stewards of the earth. And that's what the Short Bus Podcast TV is really about, in fact, is to bring about that stewardship by having good etiquette debates about the technology and how to go back to our nature and being observant as the true stewards that we're meant to be. That's our true nature, our true character, I believe, in my opinion. Again, a very strong one.
Need. At the same time, you can eat the peas, both as a full, fresh pea pod,
Greetings,
or
Arpo.
as just the green peas themselves. You can also leave it on the vine to dry and have a pea that you can store long-term for years. Now, as you get introduced to a lot of these new foods that you've never heard of before, you're also going to get introduced to a lot of new flavors. And that might mean rewilding your palate a little bit. Some things might not.
And that's one thing, again, with all these comforts and conveniences, I see people have a palate, and they've got a trained palate, and they don't want to go beyond that. There's slavery to their own tastes. You have to break those binds and go beyond them and find out what's really out there. I'm sure you will be amazed.
Taste as you'd expect or as you desire at first, but the more you eat them, the more these unique flavors become just a normal part of your palate that you love and enjoy. So I am here with Cuban oregano, and this has a flavor like your Greek oregano. That's why it has this name. But oregano, not as strong in my opinion, but a good one for garnishing food, for cooking, for juicing, for throwing into smoothies. It's got some real medicine in this herb. Here we are with African blue basil, and this plant brings so much joy to the garden. It's often full of honeybees and native bees and other pollinators, so it brings in the pollinators. The flowers are on it for many months of the year, and it's just a joy to have in the garden. Of course.
And there's another point he makes, which is great, which is the pollinators. Again, if you have the diversity of plants and you have your local pollinators come in and pollinating, they're getting the diversity as well. In that diversity, what they provide through those honeys, again, they're embedded with your own natural nutrients and bacteria and stuff, and that's what's best for your gut biome. So an important aspect here is beehives. Get some of those pollinators. Help with that. Get your own honey from your own gardens. That's another source too of refinement by nature. You don't need a honey plant to refine your honey.
It's also basil, so you can enjoy the flavor of it. If you're looking for that typical Italian basil, you're not going to get exactly what you're looking for. But if you appreciate it for what it is, you will find something you love in the African blue basil. Seminole pumpkin is a heat-tolerant pumpkin. Here in Florida, the winter squashes that you get up in the north are pretty hard to grow because of the heat. This is one that has been growing here for hundreds of years that produces beautiful pumpkins. They can range from 1 to 2 pounds to a handful of pounds. They're similar to a butternut squash in their flavor, and the color inside is a bright orange. I love them. I can eat so many of them. I once got about 70 pumpkins from just 2 plants, so they can produce a lot. These ones can thrive and they can also struggle. The pumpkins can be eaten also young as a zucchini, but I like to let them mature to get that beautiful pumpkin. What's amazing about these is they can store for a year, even outside of an air-conditioned house. I've had them stored for an entire year in my tiny house where it was 90 degrees for over 6 months. Here we are with pigeon.
Amazing. Over 90 degrees for 6 months, and he stored them for a year. So again, that goes to the preservation. Some of them have their own natural preservation periods that you can take advantage of, and they're quite beneficial. Imagine only having to provide a shelf space.
Or gandules. And again, if you want to produce some serious food in your garden, this is one of them. If you want to grow some protein, this is one of them. If you want to grow something that you can easily store for years, this is absolutely one of them. Pigeon peas dry right on the plant. You can hear them rattling, and that is the peas dried right on here that you can harvest and store. You can also eat the peas like you would a pea pod when they're young and tender. And I also just love to enjoy the flowers on here. Gandules are a staple food for many people in Puerto Rico, across the Caribbean. And one of the reasons they're a staple is because they grow really, really well. You can grow them as a hedge and keep them smaller and pruned back, or you can grow them as bushes. I've had them grow over 6 feet wide and produce hundreds of pods on each tree. Here we have galangal ginger, and this is one that is used in Thai curries. It's very strong, so you don't need a lot of it to add to your curries. It's also very hardy. You can have this lasting for years in your garden. It's definitely one of the hardiest of all of the gingers. So as far as a survival garden goes, one that can just last even if there's periods of neglect, galangal ginger is an excellent one for that. This is nopal cactus, specifically a spineless variety of nopal cactus.
Spineless variety. Imagine that, spineless cactus. Now you don't have to be afraid of cactus. Now you get to find out what the benefits are. Even the spiny ones have a lot of the same benefits, folks.
So there's no spines, there's no little glochids that get stuck on your tongue, so you can eat this raw or you can cook it. This is another survival food. We're talking about you can plant one of these little pads, and within a couple years, you can have a tree that is producing an incredible amount of food. It's been eaten for a long time. It's very much a part of Mexican cooking, Mexican cuisine, because it's a wonderful food to eat, and some people eat a whole lot of it. This is chaya, also often called tree spinach. The reason it's called spinach, I think, is because when you cook it down,
and despite them being cactuses, they actually have a high water content as well. Very, very moisturous.
It's got a similar consistency and flavor to cooked spinach. However, this plant has cyanide in it, just like yucca and yucca leaves, so you do need to cook this one properly. As with any food, you want to get to know it and you want to learn how to properly cook it. This one just takes some extra care. This is another one where you can just take a stick of it, pop it in the ground, and you can have a little chaya tree. They can turn into, I've seen them 15 feet tall, but you really want to maintain them at a low level so that you can easily access the branches and access your fresh daily greens. Papaya is an incredible one to start off your food forest. It's also great for a survival garden. It does need care. It needs water. It needs fertility. And the reason why is it puts out an incredible amount of fruit if it gets the water and the fertility that it needs. There's a couple ways to eat the papaya. You can eat it as a fruit once it's ripened and turned orange. But if you want to eat a ton of papaya, you want to embrace the green papaya. And I just remove the skin, chop that up, and I cook it up just like potatoes. You can make papaya kraut. If you want endless kraut without having to grow cabbage, which can be difficult, you can do that with the papaya kraut. And there's also green papaya salad. There's a lot of ways this food is eaten in many cultures around the world. The reason that it grows, the reason that many cultures have it as a part of their diet is because it grows abundantly. And that's what you want. Plants that grow abundantly and thrive. Papaya is definitely one of those. When I spent a year growing and foraging 100% of my food, there was only one thing I felt like that I did that was a mistake, that I would have gone back and changed. And that would have been to plant more turmeric, because the turmeric I planted thrived and produced a lot of turmeric. So it's possible to be turmeric self-sufficient here in Florida, and even much further north, it can be grown very successfully. Super wonderful medicine. I like to eat turmeric every single day. I like to have it in my soups, in my smoothies, in my sauteed vegetables. You can dry it and then turn it into a powder, or you can eat it fresh. The leaves I actually throw into my soups to add some flavor as well. And it's a wonderfully productive plant. It's one that brings me an incredible amount of joy. And of course, not only do we want to break free from the grocery store, but we want to break free from the pharmacy too. Turmeric is definitely one of our friends to help us break free from having to buy any medicines ever again. This is Everglades tomato, not your typical tomato.
Not having to buy medicines ever again. Where do you think the pharmaceutical industry gets the concepts that they use for their medications? See, their medications are synthetic copies of what they observe in nature.
Is a very...
What do you think is better, the copy or the original? See, the courts think the original one is better, although a signed copy does good too.
Small tomato, but it's very prolific. And what's incredible about this, there's a lot of incredible things, but for one, it's a volunteer tomato. Once you grow this, it'll drop tomatoes on the ground, and these tomatoes tend to come back year after year. They are
year after year, just like I mentioned with the marigolds. You just plant them once and they'll self-seed. They'll come back year after year, okay? And they'll start proliferating, because if you don't tend them, they will spread their seeds. Like I mentioned, maybe some of them farmers around him had some blown seeds into their fields, and they have random marigolds popping up in their fields now. You know, that's the way nature works. So yeah, and Tribe says those little tomatoes taste phenomenal. Yes, it's the small ones that tend to be so sweet. It's once they get bigger, they have that high acid content that sweetness starts draining. But Cherokee purples are good ones too. Those are some big tomatoes, kind of like almost like beefsteaks, and you get that Cherokee purple out. Oh yeah, those are good ones.
Are quite flavorful. So what they lack in size.
And the Black Russians. The Black Russians are awesome too.
They definitely they make up for in flavor. And the plants, they can sprawl. They can climb up trees. They can sprawl out. I've seen patches that were...
Well, the Everglades, they tend to have a better soil for tomatoes. Up here in Iowa, we have good soil for it, but we have to make sure that the topsoil is protected with some kind of leaf barrier, litter barrier, to prevent the topsoil from drying out, because that's where their root system starts spreading out first. Along with that taproot, they grow long roots outwards first to get that stable base for the strong winds we get.
Just volunteers out of compost that were probably 20 or 30 feet wide, just full of tomatoes. This plant right here was a volunteer, and it's probably got a 8 to 10 foot spread. And these are the tomatoes you want if you want tomatoes that just keep coming back year after year. This is Tithonia, and this one's not actually one you eat, but it's an incredible companion in the food forest or in the survival garden. This is great for numerous things. One, you can build walls with it. So if you want privacy from your neighbors, it builds a wonderful living wall. It's fast growing, so it's one of the fastest ways to grow walls. But these walls have other purposes as well. You can chop them back and use that as a way to build up the carbon in your soil, in your garden. So you don't need to bring in all of the resources. You can bring in plants that actually create the sources, suck the carbon right out of the air, create that mass for you to add to your garden to build up your fertility and build up.
He's talking about building the soil again. So these are all aspects. So you can have certain plants that aren't for any reason but to help build the soil.
Your soil. So, of course, how could I not mention, it's got sunflowers for months of the year. Like months of the year, you have beautiful sunflowers. It's a great way to invite in your neighbors and your community as well. The #1 most irrigated crop in what we call the United States is not a food, it's grass for lawns. If you want a grass that's actually going to do something real for you, then lemongrass is the way to grow. You can grow this and you can have a wonderful herb to make lemongrass tea. And then you can also use it in soups and curries. It proliferates, it grows. And then you just take cuttings like this, give them to your friends, and you can spread lemongrass all across your community. Sometimes we consider things bad, like weeds, grasses. It's all a matter of learning how to work with them. And when we learn how to work with them, they're no longer problems, they're actually a part of the solution. Now, no
longer problems, they're actually part of the solution. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
All plants are in season at the same time, so it can be hard to find all 30 of these plants at once. Sorrel, or Florida cranberry, or hibiscus, is a plant that is going to be grown throughout the summer in Florida, and it's only early May here, but here is a volunteer, one that just popped up. This is wonderful. You know, you've probably seen the bright red tea. It's sometimes called Jamaican sorrel, but drinking all across the Caribbean and Florida and in other parts of the Western Hemisphere that I know of it. So it makes a wonderful tea. You can also just eat these calyxes. You can also eat the leaves. Both wonderful, but tea is really where it's at, and you can dehydrate these and have this tea year around. Loofahs are both an edible, but I don't use them so much for the food. I use them because you can grow your own loofah sponges and not have to buy sponges at the store either, and be able to compost your sponges.
Imagine that. You can grow your own sponges at home. Imagine that.
Is to turn it right back into soil. Now, the edibility of it is dependent upon the variety. Some of them are bitter and not edible or desirable. So again, my favorite part is to grow the sponges. And how that works, you leave it on the plant until it dries out and you have your own loofah sponge. Your sponge that nature provides without having to take a trip to the grocery store. And this sponge is great for dishes. It's also great for scrubbing down the body. Biden's elbow.
Joshua says, hive mind is not okay with any of this permaculture stuff and have spent lots of souls to enforce. Yeah, the hive mind is what we're involved in now in this comfort and convenience stuff. That's everybody wanting to pay tribute to that false patriarch. This year in the subsistence, like I said, there's a diversity. And so when one guy learns something about his garden that he didn't know before, he starts talking to it, to his neighbors about it. And some of them know, but never mentioned it. Others never knew it. So it grows. And that's what's important, is our firsthand experiences, not the hives rhetoric.
Also called Spanish needle, is growing in yards all over Florida. And a lot of people consider it to be the bane of their existence because it puts out these little seeds that stick to our clothes that a lot of people feel really annoyed by. But the truth is that this plant is actually incredibly nutritious and medicinal. You can eat the leaves, you can eat these flowers, and I do like to cook it. Raw is not my favorite for the leaves, but I do love to nibble on the flowers raw. When it's young and tender, that's when it's going to be best for your salad bowl. You can make medicine from it year round. And these flowers are really incredible for the pollinators. They tend to be out like almost all year. So there's a little bit of a food source for the pollinators year round. So let this grow wildly in your yard. It's a wonderful plant to have, food and medicine and friendship. I am elated to share with you elderberry. I have wild foraged elderberry all the way.
Yep, just like the last one, those flowers. There's a lot of edible flowers out there and they're medicinal. This one here, elderberry. I've got elderberry juice in the fridge. It's a great additive to that medicinal cabinet.
From Florida up to Wisconsin, it grows along roadsides. It likes moist, wet areas, so you find it along lakes and creeks and ditches, and it grows wonderfully in the garden as well. I love to make elderberry syrup. I take the berries, boil them with water, and then strain that and mix it half and half with honey, and you have incredible, delicious medicine that helps with preventing, and if you get cold or flu, with helping reduce that. Elderberry is great for building fence lines. It's very fast growing, and it grows up into a fairly thick hedge, so you can also make an edible medicinal hedge in between your neighbors' places. Also, the flowers can be used to make champagne, or you can batter the flowers and dip them in a jam, and that makes for an incredible, partly garden-made snack. This is moringa.
Joshua again says, nurtured a mullein and pokeberry weed last year. Need 100 if you want to depend on lamb breath for toilet paper. Another interesting aspect. Yeah, mullein and lamb breath, people use that for toilet paper. Got nice, real soft leaves. Then he says, elderberry, pokeberry, don't chew seeds. The juice is blood cleanser. Yes. Yeah, don't chew the seeds. They're a little rough. Break your teeth and shit.
Or the vitamin tree, or the tree of life. I planted this tree about 5 years ago, and it has given me a lot of life and others a lot of life. The reason it's called the vitamin tree is because it's loaded with vitamins. It's actually one of the most nutrient-dense foods on earth. You can eat these leaves fresh right off the tree, put them in a...
The moringa tree. Moringa tree. M-O-R-I-N-G-A.
Smoothie or soups. What I like to do is dry the leaves, put them in a blender after they're dehydrated, and that makes moringa powder. I travel with that, and it's my homemade multivitamin. No need to buy multivitamins at the store, because this is basically the multivitamin tree. You also have beautiful pods coming off of it, and these pods produce seeds, and with these seeds, you can give them to others, and they can start their own moringa trees. This tree was a seed about 5 years ago, and now it's producing an incredible amount of vitamins, of nutrients. This is the tree of life, and it is giving life. Ethiopian kale is a green that you can get going in your garden that once it's producing seeds, it scatters those seeds around, and it just keeps coming back and back. It's got a really quite mild flavor that often even stays mild through the summer when other things die or get bitter. And it's got a nice flavor to it, though. You'll have to taste it for yourself, but it's wonderful in salads. It's wonderful cooked. And it is one that once you get it seeding, it spreads those seeds and it keeps coming back, and it can be in the Florida garden for months and months of the year. Molokhia, or Egyptian spinach. This is one where people from East Africa often recognize it in the garden here in Florida, and they're so elated to see it because it's been a part of cultures for 6,000 years or more. As with many of these plants, these are plants that come from Africa that have been stewarded by the people for thousands of years. Many of these have been stewarded by indigenous people of this land, Turtle Island or the United States.
Notice he's using that word steward, and that these came from Africa, and it takes a steward to grow them here to make sure that they can survive. A steward is somebody that can observe, pay attention, and learn, and still be able to propagate what he needs. So if a plant from Africa doesn't grow, he would know conditions are not variable or not generous enough to allow it, or that he can't provide it. That would be detrimental. If he can provide it, that's the stewardship. That's the working with the earth, the working with the hands, the building with the soils, the watershedding, creating paths for water and pools and collection points and this and that, so you can keep the environment moist. That's what the thing about going down to the desert doing this kind of stuff is. Rebuilding the soil in the desert areas to help climate those deserts a little bit more habitable.
For thousands of years. And I really encourage you to connect with these plants and get to know the cultures that have stewarded them. And I give an incredible amount of gratitude and thanks, because everything I shared with you today, none of it would be here. We didn't create this here in the United States. This is not new stuff. These are foods that there's been deep cultural connections with, living in reciprocity with for thousands of years. Hopi red dye amaranth. In my Central Florida gardens, I scattered these amaranth seeds into my mulch, and they popped up into these beautiful red purplish amaranths that put out these big seed heads that made a beautiful sight for everybody walking by in the neighborhood. They got over my head tall, and they self-seeded, and they just kept coming back in my gardens. The leaves are edible. They're not the prime edible amaranth. There's actually callaloo varieties that are specifically for eating the greens. They also do produce the seed, the amaranth seed, an ancient grain, and I have saved that and actually eaten meals of amaranth grain from this amaranth. I love the Hopi red dye because it just adds so much beauty, but all the amaranths add value and nutrition and beauty to the garden. daikon radish. This has a lot of utilities, both for eating and for establishing your garden. As far as eating goes, they're not your little dinky radishes. These can be over a foot long. They're crispy. They're great for adding directly to salads. You can bake them, and they're wonderful baked along with other root veggies. And of course, daikon radish kraut. You don't have to grow cabbage here in Florida. That can be a challenging one. And with daikon radish, you can have endless kraut just by grating it up with a cheese grater and adding salt, and you'll have a wonderful kraut. Daikon radish is really great for establishing the garden because what it does is it helps to basically aerate the soil by putting its roots way deep down, 12, 18 inches into the ground. And then if you leave them there, they rot and add organic matter to the soil and help to break down that mulch, break down that soil, and start building your soil.
So as you can see, sometimes, like the scripture says, you let things go back to the earth. This is the 7-year Sabbath of paying Sabbath to the Mother Earth. Sometimes you just let things go back to the earth. So portion of his crop, he just lets go back to the earth. That's paying that percent back. That paying that tithe back.
This right here is the toilet paper plant, and it is the Charmin of the garden. The leaves are soft as can be, and the leaves are about the same
There you
size
go,
as a
Josh.
toilet paper square.
There
Yet
you go,
durable,
Josh.
your fingers will not break through. The toilet paper plant is also called blue spur flower, or its scientific name is P.I.G.S.C.U.N.T.S barbatus. It's in the mint family, which means it has a nice minty smell. This is Suriname cherry, and it's one of my favorites.
So now your ass won't smell like shit when you get done wiping. It'll actually have a nice smell to it, huh? Minty.
Springtime fruits in Florida. It produces these wonderful little fruits that they call cherries. They look kind of like little pumpkins. I love the flavor. It ranges a lot from plant to plant. Some you'll love, some you might not love, but it is productive and it is abundant. This one is not in the Food Forest Starter Bundle, and there's a handful of other ones that I want to share just a little bit of information on, just a recognition to that aren't in the bundle as well. First, that would be banana. They produce a lot of food and a lot of nourishment and a lot of joy and easy to grow. Jamaican cherry, one of the fastest growing trees for a food forest. Sugarcane, never have to buy sugar again. Taro, a really great sustenance crop, puts out some really calorie-dense food. Yaupon holly, if you want a caffeinated beverage, never have to buy coffee again. You can grow your own caffeine. It's related to yerba mate, and it's got similar health benefits. And Suriname spinach, another wonderful perennial spinach. This one is more tender and really great to fill your salad bowls. So there you have it, 30 of the easiest to grow, most abundant foods here in Florida. This is how you can start your survival garden or your very own food forest. I really, really want to help you get started. I spent a year growing and foraging 100% of my food, and I want you to be able to break free from the grocery store. So I've actually created the Food Forest Starter Bundle, which has every single one of these plants in it, either from cuttings or seeds. You can make a donation, and we'll send you this in the mail.
So here he's showing the aspect of those, the observable world around us, and instead of just being seeds, we've got sprouts that you just stick in the ground, stick it in the soil. So again, observing our nature and in the world around us and how it grows, we learn this type of stuff, and it helps us more efficiently in life, in living life. And with that, folks, we are at the end of the stream. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I'll be back again tomorrow with another one, going over the same aspects of the Short Bus Podcast TV, trying to help the viewers understand you're the ones that the show is built for. It's so that you can learn and grow. I'm bringing the information. Hopefully, as it goes along, I'll have people that I can interview and the ones that are actually doing it. And then we'll keep doing these video reviews, and we'll have our weekly podcast debates. So hit the like, share, and subscribe. There's a PayPal link down there for anybody who wants to share some love. And of course, all is appreciated. And we'll see you again next time. Until then, you know I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass whether you love me back. Let's say I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you don't respect me. That part's on you.
Step into the light or the shadow it casts. A look in the mirror, stripping the mask. The ego deflects what the id wants to hide, but we find the truth on the edge of the slide. The void isn't empty, it's a canvas of gray, where the ghosts of our bias come out to play. You point at the monster, you point at the screen, but it's only a shadow that's being seen. We sit in the silence where the tension is rife, dissecting the ego with a surgical knife. From the depths of the abyss to the clarity of mind, leaving the noise and the drama behind. High etiquette, held as the ultimate key. This is the Short Burst Podcast TV. See the mirror for what it is. The progression begins now.
Man up, slaves, and hit those buttons, or I'll send ice.